So check that out. All these pennies right here on the blue tape. Every one of the pennies on the blue tape is a different year and a different mint. Yeah, that's right. I have collected almost every year and mint of every oh, I have collected just about every year and mint of Memorial Penny. I'm just missing a 1959 P mint, a 62 P mint, 65, and yeah, that's all. And when I find one that's shinier than the other, and it's the same year, same mint, then I basically replace it. It took me about, I want to say, 5 hours of sorting through all my pennies. I also decided to sort through S mints. Here are my S mints. Got a few of them. They're not a whole lot common. Wish this camera wasn't ass. Yeah, but anyway, you get the point. Shiny memorial pennies, bicentennial pennies, wheat pennies. I love sorting through all those. Anyway, I'm going to react to this guy, G Generosity, and he's doing school drills. I hate school drills so much. Like fire drills, they are awful because remember, I'm a Century kid, okay? So even like what's called the most quiet sound for me is very freaking loud. It's annoying and it's atrocious. You know, I'm gonna start off. This beach is kind of deep, so I'm actually gonna remove. Let me try to see if I can get. Ow, sorry. Let me see if I can get the command block to work. Let's execute. At A, screw. So, well, I'm gonna test some. At E. I hate how they messed up the execute command. That pissed me off. Execute, right? What? Run. Okay, so that's how it works. I'm gonna take a picture of that. I'm gonna react to this guy. He's reacting to school drills. As I said before, I do not like school drills. They're so annoying. And it hurt the hell out of my ears.
On Earth, we face a multitude of natural enemies.
This guy's
We
funny.
have the wild animals, the natural disasters, the Fire Nation, and worse yet, Steve Kerr's son. And throughout our lives, we are preparing ourselves if we ever suddenly find ourselves in a situation where we come across these obstacles. Normally, and in case of those situations, we have school practice drills. Now, is that really why we have school drills? No, I just have a phobia of Steve Kerr's son. American schools are known for a lot of things. None of them are good things, but they are certainly things. And I remember in school we used to have surprise emergency practice drills. You know, stuff like the fire alarm piercing our ears at 8:30 in the morning while we're still half asleep. And for me, these drills never made sense. Because each drill, they'd want us to act in a calm and organized fashion. Even in a situation when it's not a drill and it's the real thing, they expect students to just walk out calmly. That's just not reality. In a real fire drill, nobody gonna walk in a single file line out the door. Everyone is gonna be running and sprinting out of there, shoving everything and everyone.
Yeah, no kidding.
That's what's really gonna happen. Nobody.
Looks like we have a lag spike. Minecraft? Minecraft, are you okay? Bedrock, are you okay? What in the Sam hell is going on? Okay, so we're gonna disregard the exist at S. Okay, we got the command back. Crap, out of range. Anyway, yeah. Okay, I agree with this guy. Okay, let's be honest. You hear there's a fire in the building? No, 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 no. No, your ass ain't calm. You're gonna be rushing out there like, get out of my way, Tommy. There's a fire in this building. We gotta get out of here. And I was going, I wanna live to play Fortnite for another day, Tommy. Like, you feel me, Tommy? You get what I mean? Anyway, let's keep going.
Be calm and collective. Everybody's gonna be running out of there because they don't want to burn to death. Now, this also might not be the safest way to do it. Because in a perfect world, we're all running as fast as possible, but we're all running in sync. You know, nobody getting trampled or injured, no casualties. We'll all get out of there spick and span. The problem is that doesn't exist, and we have some slow-ass people holding us up from us trying not to be burned alive. Fast students trying to run away, and slow students holding them up. But I don't want the slow students to get injured, you know. We're all human after all. I'm trying to get everybody out of there as safe and fast as possible. So I found a simple solution to that problem. During a real fire drill, all the slow people,
Go in the
you know
back.
who you are, stay back in the classroom and wait for everybody else to run out. Then after, when everybody's gone, then you can go. Hopefully, you didn't get burned alive during that time. Simple problems require simple solutions. This might sound inhumane, but I swear, this is the best option for everybody. I speak for the people when I say this. We don't want slow niggas walking 2 kilometers
Oh my
trying
god.
to sprint out.
Oh my god, this guy.
Pull out the way and run you over.
Like a comic.
We got no time to waste. You walking around slow is gonna kill the both of us. And not gonna lie, I'd rather you die than me. So get the hell out the way! Leaving them behind in the classroom is the best option. That's how fire drills at school should be done. Not this single file line stuff. They will be safe, I promise you. We will leave them with a water bottle just in case. But you know what's worse than how...
That could have taken hours.
Whether it's morning or afternoon, request a tour on your schedule.
Why don't we search up like tornado myths? I love this. I like how I get the top searches go under an underpass. Yeah, that is a big myth. That's fake. Don't do that. Maybe actually I don't know if it would even work in a derecho. But seriously, don't go in an underpass. It creates the wind tunnel effect. The wind tunnel effect basically will suck you out and it'll make the tornado force winds even stronger than they already are. If that's a really good oh my god, I hate this. It's a really good way to kill yourself is to go. It's gone.
Looks like it's now touching down.
Tornado Alley, real time, Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Is that where Birmingham is? Or very close to where Birmingham is?
Now it's doing major damage in Tuscaloosa. We were watching this come into a metropolitan area. Jesus help them. It was horrendous. Oh no.
Wow. All I could think about was, is this thing coming for me? This thing is huge.
It was utterly terrifying.
Man, screw string.
You could feel the power of this monster.
Fact, I'm not kidding. It was right on top of us. That's the tornado right there.
It looked like it had a mind, that it had personality. This was the scariest moment of my life.
That's one nasty bitch. Dude. Tornadoes are freaky. Tuscaloosa, Alabama. 2:53 p.m.
We had severe weather that morning between 3:30 and 9 o'clock, and during that time, 5 people were killed and 250,000 people had no power.
National Weather Service notified me that Tuscaloosa had a 40% plus chance of being hit by a tornado.
Damn.
It's important that we take heed of this, and hopefully Tuscaloosa will come out unscathed, but it doesn't hurt for us to be prepared and ready for what lies ahead in the next few hours. At that point, I decided to go ahead and activate the city's incident command system, which is basically our emergency protocols.
I love working in the emergency department because you have the opportunity to take care of people. It was a typical day in the emergency department. Typical patients that we get every day.
This looks weird, but trust me, this is an absolutely 300 IQ play right here.
And it was a beautiful day. The sun was shining.
The problem we were facing was the fact that the sun popped out. And then you had a lot of people saying, well, everything's going to be okay.
No.
Stuff where we really...
Okay, this is a myth. This is a myth that is absolutely false. And I can say that, alright? Here's what happened one day. One day, I was riding my four-wheeler around, and out of nowhere, I swear to, it was the sunniest day you can imagine. A summer day. Me and my cousin found a cold funnel. It just spawned really close to our house. Luckily, no one was hurt, no damage was caused. But the sunniest day in this cold funnel, remember, that funnel could have touched down, it could have been an actual tornado. It doesn't matter what the strength was. But that tornado could have been a 5 or a 4. You never know. They're still deadly, no matter what their rating is. But yeah, that's a bad myth to follow.
The fact that the sun is out is the worst possible thing because that makes the air more buoyant and
And
unstable.
it makes it hotter.
Temperatures continue to warm. The instability increases, and again, a lot of the severe weather parameters are just off the charts today.
Looking at the data, we have a checklist of about 64 parameters that you need for a tornado. We had about 60 of the 64. They were just screaming, almost an extreme range.
Any of these storms could erupt and go severe in a heartbeat. And
All of a sudden, the atmosphere just started changing. The wind picked up, got dark. We knew we had something big coming.
That particular day, we weren't doing anything special. We'd actually had a couple of days of thunderstorms, and a very good friend of mine, Josh, had been shooting. He was just playing around with a new video camera that I'd gotten not too long ago and was just trying to catch lightning. We have seen some of the stuff on the news about, potential tornadoes, but that's kind of something that we get almost every single day during the summer. So it wasn't really
He ain't wrong.
we really fretted too much about.
If there's a year in the United States where an Alabama doesn't get hit by a tornado, you're not living in the United States.
I looked towards the front of my house where I saw my friend, and he was like, "Look right over there."
holy,
You could just see movement and velocity.
I can't see shit. The camera is bad.
Around us that wasn't normal.
we want you to be in a safe place right now.
We just showed radar. For a lot of people, it looks like a bucket of spill paint. But you show a live stream, I will tell you, people will do something.
Look at the live stream. We've got John Brown and Mike Wilhelm, two of our better sky watchers.
I work for the state of Alabama, Department of Human Resources. I've stayed in touch with weather and studied it a lot for probably about 25 years.
Oh, yeah, look at that thing. I see a little finger. Whoa, butterfly.
I worked with Sky Watchers for ABC 3340, and we were quite confident that there was a storm that was making aim on Tuscaloosa.
It's rotating for sure.
That is lowering. I see a few little fingers there.
And that particular day, every storm was isolated, and it was maintaining strength, and it was rotating.
It's starting to come into view. It's coming down to a point.
It's right there in front of us. Right in front.
We were looking at the storm, and John says, "Mike, a lot of people are going to die today, and they just don't know it yet."
I am a student at the University of Alabama studying journalism. For about 6 years, I've been working.
I'm sorry, I have to search this up. Where is Tuscaloosa?
It was while I was in one of my classes that we started getting word that the weather was going to be a little rougher than we thought, and so my professor asked if the station needed me
me. And at that point, I was able to go to the station, and
I don't know where that
really
is.
started to progress.
West Alabama is bracing for more stormy weather.
And the same system has already been blamed for several deaths and destroying many businesses and homes all across the South. For the latest,
I'm the news director and anchor at WVUA-TV. Being the news person, people are asking you, Lynn, is this going to be as bad as people say it is? And you really don't have any answers. It's really not in your hands. At the same time, you're having to think about your own personal safety. This potentially could hit the building where we are right now.
So again, get in the lowest floor of your home, put as many walls between you and the outside as possible.
We had converged in the studio to watch the tower camera, and we saw the tornado come down, take shape, and it became fairly large.
Don't take a chance with this thing. This is obviously a very dangerous situation.
TDS.
But then in just a few moments, we saw it lift back up, and it goes back up into the clouds.
And yeah, it looks like it's lifting.
You could feel that collective sigh of relief.
It appears that it's not on the ground at this second, but
it's still there.
Get angry and come back down even worse. And in just a couple minutes, it did exactly that.
Looks like it's now touching down. This is the west of Tuscaloosa. Yeah, we're seeing power flashes. So we have an emergency situation. This tornado is now on the ground. It looks like it's a now sizable tornado. We're watching live. This is coming right towards Tuscaloosa.
I've lived in Tuscaloosa pretty much my entire life. I was out of school working for my dad at the time. We got processing on fires. Yep. Probably is a fire. It's lightning. Yep. I had one of my friends, Nate Hewitt, with me. Oh my God! Look at that fire. That is raging. The storm was pretty bad, and so we had actually left work a little bit early.
I hope my boss knows like what's called. Okay, I have to say this. I don't care the repercussions of this. If there's a tornado coming from my house or coming from my work, and I have any chance that I have to get away from it in a safe manner, then homie, I'm clocking out. I don't care. Take my money for that week. I'd rather have my money removed from me than my freaking life. Bad, and it's proven that it's going to hit, I think you should have a chance to leave. You know what I mean? Because I'm saying this because of the amount of people that died at the candle factory in Mayfield.
Sitting on the interstate, having no idea where the storm's actually going. I didn't really realize the severity of the situation.
You can see debris in the air. That thing is half a mile wide.
Once I actually looked over, I didn't realize that we were nearly as close as we were when it was right on top of us.
We need to go that way. You're fine. Go the back. I'm not kidding.
My God. Black roaring cone. Actually, scratch that. That's not a cone. That's a whole ass stovepipe.
You can see debris in the air.
I'm just watching a documentary about the Tuscaloosa tornado. When did this hit? Oh, 2011. Oh yeah, that was a year, by the way. 2011 saw a hell of a lot of tornadoes. I mean, so many. I mean, when you look at a tornado by year graph, you can definitely see that 2011 was a very active year for tornadoes to hit.
Felt like we were
He's crossing the interstate right where we were. Oh my God.
It became apparent as to exactly how much damage was being done. You can see huge debris. You can actually see what appears to be full-length 2x4s. I mean, just everything and anything had been sucked up and was spiraling around a half-mile circle. Oh my God. That thing is destroying everything. It's gonna hurt me.
Greene County and the other reports we've had, this thing is clearly a large, violent tornado that is down on the ground.
I tried to indicate that this is a genuine emergency. This is not a false alarm.
This is an extremely violent situation. Notice the power flashes.
It's very hard to stay composed on the air because you know that if many people don't do anything in the path of that, there's a good chance they're going to lose their life.
I want everybody in the city limits of Tuscaloosa to stay sheltered.
I have a wife and 2 children, but you cannot be fatigued, you cannot be distracted, you cannot be emotional.
Nobody should be on campus walking. Nobody should be driving.
Oh, no. This was different on a lot of levels.
It's
You
parked.
don't normally see a very clearly defined funnel like you did with that tornado. Had
But now it's just messy.
vortices, meaning there was a lot of small funnel-like shapes that circulated around the outside of the tornado
Sub-vortices.
itself.
Debris everywhere. Now it's doing major damage in Tuscaloosa.
As we were standing there, we were watching this come into a metropolitan area.
Not good, Mike. No, it's going to destroy a big chunk of Tuscaloosa. Jesus, help him. Help him be in safety. Please.
It was just obvious it was a horrendous situation.
Oh, no.
Look at that thing. I am an on-air personality program director for a radio station. All of a sudden, they started blaring the sirens. Oh my God. Tornado was right in front of the radio station. Look out at this cloud of black dust that just goes all the way up to the heavens. This thing is huge. It was breathtaking.
This is a very large tornado coming directly our way. This includes the University of Alabama campus.
My God, a whole ass campus.
Begin to decide right now.
The majority of people who were gathered in that studio, Tuscaloosa is home for them.
This is coming right towards our television station.
Whoa,
The
it's
power of the fear.
a small wedge.
You want to get everybody out of the hallway.
That's a small wedge right there.
Our studio, if that is a possibility, because
Want to hear a really good tornado safety tip? When you have a cone, like when you have a cone of a tornado, right, and it's forming a cone, right? Always assume that the widest point is at the top. The cone, the bottom of the cone might be like this, but it might be like that. So it might be forming a cone like that. So if you kind of see the shape I'm doing it, like if I draw up Minecraft, if the tornado is like this, like if let's go, don't assume that this is the length. Assume that like this is the length. This is the actual width, not this little tiny cone, but that. That's how tornadoes work. Even if because if you assume that little tip is the strong part, then you're going to be tricked into thinking that it's not going to damage anything outside of that. Because even, anything within, I want to say half a mile of a tornado will definitely be affected. 100%. Oh, of course, if you go into, something like the core, you're going to get what's called cored, which means that you're going to get absolutely obliterated. Barely anything survives. Of all the structures I've seen, only one structure I've ever seen on video has ever been able to survive a tornado core. It's the one I explored. This is one building I explored. And that building was built with highly reinforced concrete, 6 inches thick. I mean, this place is built. Not like anybody's houses, though.
A life-threatening situation.
We just all huddled underneath our news desk, and it was people that were working at the station as well as people that were just grabbed from outside in the hallway and told to come in. It was really utterly terrifying.
I see the clouds moving like mad over there. There's debris flying in the air, dude. Dude, that's getting loud.
The rumbling of the ground and the pressure change and the sound growing louder and louder and louder came towards us. We were scared to the point of going inside.
Oh my God, you're doing that.
Oh, dude, you see all the debris up there flying? Oh, dude, that's wild.
Oh, it's right there. That's the tornado right there.
Damn, they're very close. Too close.
Might want to go down to the basement.
Yeah, let's get downstairs. As I turn around away from the door, I see my tree disappear, and I said, all right, it's time for us to go downstairs and get to a safe place. I grabbed all the couch cushions off the couch and threw them down there.
That's a...
Oh, it's right there. That's the tornado right there.
I grabbed all the couch cushions and then just kind of laid on top of those couch cushions and put them behind me and laid on top of my friend.
Oh my God.
Oh, dude, everything's gone. A tree landed here.
There's a hole in the roof. There are holes in the roof.
Above my room and our old computer room, the entire roof was ripped off. There was nothing left.
Oh my God, get on the street. The porch is gone.
Oh my God.
There was probably about 5 trees laying on top of the walkway to the house. And in that situation, it was when I was positive that we were in danger.
We're gonna have to get out of here, dude. This house could collapse.
This thing looks like it might be over 1/2 mile wide, maybe up to 3/4 of a mile wide. Now, Isaiah Harper, you're seeing a tornado right now. Tell us what you've got.
It was monstrous. It was just huge. And it looked like, from sitting still at one point, that it had a mind, that it had personality. I'm watching people die. And at the same time, my wife was on the east end of Tuscaloosa, and my kids at home, and I'm wondering which way is this thing going to go. Either I'm about to die or my family is about to die. So it was the most scariest moment of my life. I mean, I saw my life sort of flash between my eyes.
It's photogenic as shit, too.
Holy crap, guys. Oh my gosh, wow. While I was filming the whole thing, all I could think about was, is this thing coming for me? Oh my God. It looked like it was kind of making a turn for our direction. Anybody get inside? So we got back inside. And then the station went dark. And all we were left with was a giant black cloud that was staring at us.
Oh my God.
The last time we had one this big was probably March 21st, 1932, before my time. That destroyed so much of Tuscaloosa.
We were huddled in this room, and we were surrounded with this little television. This is where I've grown up. This is where I have raised a family. And now we were watching on live television the tornado rip through the heart of the city. And that was the first moment for me where you get that weak in the knees moment. It was traumatic.
Right down Skyland Boulevard here and Interstate 5920.
The quietness in the room was amazing. And then the TV went blank. I believe the tornado at that point was about halfway through our city.
All right, this is a life-threatening situation. We have a very large tornado coming right into the center part of Tuscaloosa. This includes our television station.
In that moment, you really don't know exactly what you're going to do. At some point, I started to pray.
This thing's coming right towards the University of Alabama campus. We're going to stay on air as long as we possibly can. We're getting power glitches. A very large tornado on the ground right now.
Then, boom. It's completely gone. Everything went black. So I grabbed my camera and I just started running up the flights of stairs in the building. And as soon as I got out of the stairwell, there it was. And all you can do is just look. It's such an overpowering feeling to be eyeball to eyeball with a killer like that.
See the rotation, see the debris. It's coming over the campus buildings. We're seeing the rotation, seeing debris.
It's such an overpowering feeling to be eyeball to eyeball with a killer like that.
It's coming over the campus buildings.
You could feel the power of this monster. And when it came dangerously close, I ducked back into the stairwell and just started to pray.
Are you kidding me? Nobody should be out there.
You had two really important facilities close to the tornado path. One was DCH Regional Medical Center. That would be the ultimate disaster if a tornado took out that hospital.
Our nurse manager stuck her head in the door and said for us to take cover because the news had reported that there had been a tornado spotted on 15th Street coming straight for the hospital. We had this child who was intubated, so we quickly decided that the other nurse would lie over her head and that I would lie over her body on the stretcher and hang on. At this point, we were unaware of how big this tornado was. And then all of a sudden, there was this huge black cloud just swirling. And I screamed, oh my gosh, there it is. It came so quickly, and it was just so huge. And it was so close. It was almost like you could reach out and just touch it. It was there, and then it was gone. And the sky was clear again.
It looks like the tornado is beyond the range of the Tuscaloosa Skycam, so it's moving away from the city. But again, I would say for about the next maybe 15 minutes, I would stay sheltered until we could come out and assess the damage.
Oh my God, damage. Look at that right underneath. Look over there. biggest obstacle was all the debris. There were whole trees down the road
The
and
lines.
2x4s and signs. At that point, I think everything kind of became surreal.
I can't even recognize this place, and I'm driving up and down this. We can't get there.
The area we pulled up to, it was about a block and a half away from where I work and had been just a couple hours before, and it looked like an absolute war zone. There was nothing left except for a few power poles that were broken off. Houses were completely laid out over 30 or 40 feet, but there was nothing truly left of them.
Get in. Come on. Oh my God. You okay? Hey, are people okay? I don't know. I can't. Can I use your phone? Yeah. My phone. Oh my God. It just went right through. What number? It just went right through the city. 911. Somebody, I can't call nobody. Oh my God.
I hope this person's okay.
When she said that she could hear people screaming for help, I think that's when we got out and we started trying to help.
Man, we gotta like there's tons of people out there. I know.
Damn.
As we were in the vehicle, I was getting updates about 2 communication towers being destroyed. About 80% of the city's heavy equipment was destroyed. 911 being gone. And a fire station being destroyed.
You would have entire houses that were blown off the foundation. You could see trees stripped of their bark. Most of the trees, in many cases, were just completely uprooted and tossed somewhere else. Cars tossed around like toys, crumpled up into balls like a piece of paper. A lot of people described it like a bomb went off, only over a long swath.
Wow.
Trees are blocking roads. There's no information. Cell service is dismantled. To see what that beast did to this city was unbelievable.
I saw people just emerging, people with cuts, bleeding, impaled objects. They looked to me almost like zombies.
I kind of describe it as an unraveling nightmare because we saw the landscape totally changed. It was unrecognizable.
Wow.
I was never really concerned about where I lived because I hadn't heard anything about Alberta or my apartment.
Isaiah, tell us where you are and what you got.
James, I'm on 13th Street. I'm standing right here in the parking lot. Those businesses are no more. They have been completely leveled. It's a complete disaster here, James. There was a Shell gas station on the corner of 13th and McFarland. And everything inside of that gas station had been gutted by the storm, except for the counter. And
Hi.
I remember walking up to a lady. She was still holding on to the counter, and she was crying. She says, "I wrote this storm holding on to this counter.
Wow.
And I'm not letting this go until somebody tells me for sure that thing is gone."
Good.
So
Thanks
the
for
storm was
asking.
gone, and during that interview, she let go.
Wow. That's actually insane.
The neighbors are all right, man. I know they had all those kids over there.
That lady survived. What is this rated? What rating did this one get?
Some of the things that you have, but then that very quickly dissipates.
Had to be an F4 or 11. Yeah, F4. Check this out. This is called Void Blocks. You can go through void blocks, but you can place blocks. Like, let's say if I wanted to, I don't know if it can't really do ladders, but if you wanted to put like a button on it, yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
I remember, like, okay, when we went up, like, I don't know what interstate was, like 74. Usually, like, me and my mom used to go up there. There was, like, this part of highway, right? I'm making a beach. And then and then when you went past this highway, you'd see this, like, overpass or these pieces of these, like, you know, like the things that support an overpass on the highway? You could see those, but they were just sitting there, and I never knew what they were when we used to go up to Chicago. And then my mom told me that years ago, a tornado actually came through and ripped out that overpass, and now the only thing that remained were those pillars. And I'm like, and I connected the dots. I'm like, wow, that is true, because in that area there was just trees debarked. Like, there were still trees that had no bark on them. They were all mutilated and ripped up, torn apart, and all that stuff. Yeah, another thing is, like, I actually live 30 minutes from the infamous Washington EF4 that struck, like, what, almost 9 years ago? And so I know there's another EF4 that struck before I was born here, and it destroyed an entire factory. Like, there's this place called Parsons. Parsons, Parsons. It's this factory. It's located on the corner of 117 and 116 in Illinois. That factory is brand new because in 2002 or 3, like in the early, it was completely swept away by a tornado. It got leveled. And you remember what happened to all the people in there? Yeah, I should make a Minecraft country. Everybody in that building survived. No deaths. Which is absolutely amazing. They were they were professionally trained, and they left the building in a secure order, leading to absolutely no fatalities in that building. Something that Candle Factory should have actually listened to. Instead, it led to one of the worst scenarios ever, where these people were barred in and threatened to be fired if they left the building. And because of that, over 20 people died in that building alone. There was a lawsuit filed against that company, and I hope that company loses, honestly. Their idiocy has led to the injury and death of multiple people in the tens. They deserve to lose that lawsuit. I don't care. They're scummy. So, did they win it? Okay, this is December 15. Yeah, they're suing them. Yeah, the people that actually survived that place, they did try to file a lawsuit and sue the place. And I totally support them. The way that they were blocked in and prevented from leaving the building is completely, like, dumb. It should never have happened. It should never happen. If there's a storm threatening your facility, you should have your workers either take shelter or leave. These workers were forced to work until that storm hit, and it obliterated this place. I mean, like, there was almost nothing surviving. That night, it was the same night where the 2021 December outbreak happened. I remember, like, I got live coverage as I literally was witnessing the warehouse be destroyed down in East St. Louis. The entire thing was peeled open like a can of tuna. It's pretty scary, honestly.
A couple of trees leaned over on the side of their house, and you know I was worried. Yeah, there should be people on the way. Children.
Which is why you need to wear helmets and shoes. I don't even bring shoes. I bring boots. Muck boots. They're able to step on nails and rusty items and still be able to survive. It was recorded in Tuscaloosa at 5:46. I can't imagine how, like, scary that has to be. I remember when I was playing Xbox 360, and my mom came in my room, right? She said, like, Race, there's a tornado impacting Washington. We need to get in the shelter. It was not really that close to us, but still, we had to take shelter. I actually uploaded another video, too. Like, this tornado was forming really close to our house. We had to take shelter. It struck in El Paso, which is very close to our location, and we had to take shelter.
I remember the first one we got to was an elderly lady, and the exterior bathroom wall had fallen over and just basically encased her in the bathtub. We went and pushed the wall up and helped her up, and then me and Nate saw a little girl standing on a pile of rubble that used to be her house, and she was just standing there crying for her mom and her sister. We heard the sister first, found her after a few minutes of digging, and we could hear the mom calling. We wound up having to tear a door off of some of the debris and used it as a backboard, carried the mom out to an ambulance that was there.
I don't play Fortnite, dude. I'm sorry.
The first 3 patients that came to the hospital came by ambulance, and we never saw them on the trauma hall because they perished before they actually got into the hospital.
Dude, that sucks.
It was very difficult.
I abandoned Fortnite years ago. Oh god. I have no idea why, but I read your gamer tag as living with a coal gamer. Dude, I swear, I might have mild dyslexia or something. Because, like, for example, when I sort pennies, if I see a 1950, like, 85 penny, I might accidentally read it as a 1958 penny. It's weird. I don't know why that my brain does that. It just... I don't know.
So you had to tell them, I don't know where your child is. And so you have these panicked parents begging you to tell them that their children are okay. And you can't.
I would be scared for his neighbor's children. He comes from his neighbor's children. That's what the thing says. I believe this channel also does a thing on the Greensburg tornado. That one was a very violent one. Not like in like concept, like the tornado was violent as hell. It completely leveled the town. It was an F5 tornado. It was straight out of a movie. The entire town was completely swept away from the face of Earth. And it's rebuilt. They rebuilt, and it's one of the greenest cities ever. No pun intended. Like, it's actually economically friendly. Everything's built to LEED Platinum.
I think it really hit me the next morning that the night video, you just don't know, but that first light of day chopper video was just horrifying.
Wow, that's entire apartment blocks leveled.
Even though I've been doing this for 36 years and I've worked through many tornado outbreaks, this was the big one for me. This is certainly one of the worst
we woke up to sunny weather. It was just very odd because we had just been through such a monster of a storm. It's a fire station. We immediately started seeing damage, and one of the first real places that we saw was a fire station. Oh, this used to be the church. I looked up and I saw just this gaping hole inside this church. Oh, and every day they had this sign that was like inspirational. There was a chandelier that was still there. It was just this sad little church that
Wow,
so
that chandelier's
and it was
strong.
just crumbling. That was a scene that I will never forget.
Here's a problem about tornado victims is that you gotta be careful, because what happens is that there's a lot of power lines down, and if it's rainy, which most times it is, then it actually can help conduct electricity through power lines, and it can kill you even several feet away. And you got gases pouring in the air, which can be toxic and fatal, and can start flames if touching these electrical lines. And that's where, you know, you mix all that up, and it becomes like a mixing pot of disaster.
We dig down and we can't find them.
There was this young college boy who came in, and he had some really significant chest trauma and head trauma. He reminded me of my son, and I felt like I wanted to be the one to take care of him. All I could think of was, here is this young man who did absolutely nothing wrong, but he's gonna die, and I knew he was gonna die, and it just broke my heart.
College students from the University of Alabama who live down there. I actually talked with one. She told me that
Or you mean am I in school? Or did you mean to ask me, am I in school? Nice, not bad, I like that. Man, we're almost done with the downtown area. I like that beach, it's so cool. It's Saturday. We don't go to schools on Saturdays. Silly Willy. Yeah, it's okay.
When that tornado came through, she says only the bathroom was left standing in their house, and thankfully, as we were out there was a woman who said the storm blew her newborn baby out of her arms.
Oh my God.
Somebody heard a cry in the rubble, and she was determined that was her baby. We were all out there, we were digging and moving the bricks with her. But then our hearts dropped when we got to the source of the cry, and it was some kid's doll that had a crying mechanism. I don't believe to this day they ever found that child.
That sucks, man.
Major gas leak on 359 here at 35th Street. We're in bad shape at 6th Avenue East and 15th Street.
The energy level seems to be pretty low today. You can tell fatigue is starting to set in with some of these people who have lost everything.
I wonder what I can do here.
Now we're doing stories about people who are still missing. And I did a story of little Michaela Edwards. She was a sweet, precious little 4-year-old girl. And she's with some of her family huddled, trying to hold on to some plumbing to protect themselves from the storm. Edwards says the rest of his family survived by hovering in a bathtub. And all of a sudden, 2 of her family members are okay, but they can't find little Michaela. Family and friends searched this area around the clock.
Maybe I should.
To the VA hospital, and where they was, bringing bodies in from the tragedy that happened. And she was there. She was there, and she was gone.
Having to report that after holding out some hope that she may be found alive, I was really sad.
Yeah, I have a bunch of space. You know what I'm gonna do?
I wonder how far we're gonna have to walk in order to get to an area where cars can actually travel.
was, and we decided to go up to University Boulevard, and there weren't houses anymore. Everything was gone. That was the biggest shock. We didn't get hit directly, anywhere near as hard as I thought that we did.
This was the office. As we had gotten closer and closer to my apartment, we saw a building standing there. Oh my god.
How about many? Like a multi-function
I
building.
just kept thinking, I am so lucky. I'm going to be able to
Excuse me, horse.
things. I mean, we were
Here, buddy. Stay right there, please.
No, that's the bottom. Wow. We were not actually seeing my apartment. What we were seeing was my downstairs neighbor's apartment. And I was on the top floor, and the top floor was completely gone. It was just from on top of the world to it's worse than I ever thought. I don't know what to do. For a while, I kind of bumbled around in the debris. Kitchen. Stuff was just everywhere. It was just devastating. I kept looking through the rubble. Oh my gosh, my grandma's pearls. Oh my god. And at one point, we find my grandma's pearls that she had gotten me. Wow. They're perfect. There's jewelry in there? Not all of it, but there's some. And so that was a moment that gave me a lot of hope. Like, I could move on from this because I was getting little pieces of my life back.
The tornado was down for about 80 miles. It's approximately at the widest point 1 mile. The maximum wind velocity was
Jesus.
180 to 190.
Holy hell, that is a... I'm sorry, I have to show you that. Look at the path. It goes all the way from the corner of the screen, corner to corner of my screen. That's breathtaking. That's scary. That is a long track tornado too. Wow.
And that is absolutely inexcusable. I've got to take the energy I have and work on preventing this from happening again.
You can be a part of a process that can deliver information that's potentially life-saving, but we had one of the highest death counts ever. So it was one of those days that I don't think I'll ever totally...
No kidding. It's a very wide path.
Do you have patience that you feel like I didn't do enough? I could have done something.
It's like, yeah.
And that's tough.
The President and First Lady offered hugs and handshakes to members of a community that has suffered the ultimate loss.
I've got to say, I've never seen devastation like this. It is heartbreaking.
I remember he would keep saying, Walt, I've never seen destruction.
17. I know. It's not believable.
You've never seen people fight back like this. Here in Tuscaloosa, it was the people that came to the rescue, and it made me so proud to say that Tuscaloosa is my home.
I was blessed that no one in my family was harmed. I realized that life is so precious. It really changed my outlook on life.
Since the tornado, I have become a firefighter. Being able to give back to my community in the weeks after the storm.
What a Chad.
Direction for what I wanted to do for my life.
When all the comforts of normal life are stripped away, you will see a beauty in people like you've never seen before. You'll see that person who has almost nothing give everything they have to help someone else. And no matter how bleak the situation may be, there's always hope.
No. Mayfield EF4 4. This tornado There's a lot of argument about this tornado. People will say that it's 2 tornadoes, and the others will say it is 1 quad state.
On the evening of
Okay, here's what I think. Maybe it could be 2, but maybe it could have been a tornado that lifted, but then it struck down. I don't know. I can't say because I've never really been a witness.
December 10th, 2021, a worrying combination of atmospheric conditions would lead to a devastating outbreak of tornadoes across the Mississippi and Ohio River valleys.
Ohio?
Its consequences would shake the region to its core and leave everything in its path unrecognizable. One of the tornadoes in this outbreak would be particularly devastating, leaving untold...
This is the one that caused the candle factory destruction.
57, an unseen monster masked by the darkness of night. Today, we discuss the Mayfield tornado.
This one was This is the worst. This one was in Arkansas.
December 10th seemed no more exceptional than the days prior, aside from some unusually warm and pleasant weather for what was supposed to be winter. Many residents were carrying on with their daily activities, preparing for the upcoming holidays.
Yeah, this is...
However,
This is December 10th. There's not tornadoes here. This is what's called. I think I know why there's so many tornadoes in winter now. It's because of global warming. It's making it too hot for tornadoes, and winter is the only time that tornadoes can get cold air to mature and function like they're supposed to. That's worrying, actually. Very worrying.
Many residents were carrying on with their daily activities, preparing for the upcoming holidays. However, unseen to the average person, the building blocks of a major disaster are assembling above their heads. A deep, upper-level trough is moving in from the west. As it crosses the Rocky Mountains, a surface low develops and starts to drift northeast. As it does so, unseasonably warm and moist air is being drawn in from the Gulf of Mexico. Dew points across the warm sector soar into the mid to upper 60s, with temperatures breaking records for December. This contributes to Cape values of 1,500 to 2,000 joules per kilogram.
That's energetic.
Winds in the warm sector change rapidly in both.
Usually 1,000, I think, is required to form a tornado.
To a strongly sheared environment. The intense wind shear and ample instability are forming an environment favorable for the formation of long-track, intense, rotating thunderstorms called supercells. These storms can produce torrential rainfall, severe winds, hail, and most concerning of all, intense tornadoes.
Tornadoes.
Noting the risk for severe weather, the Storm Prediction Center denotes a level 4 out of 5 moderate risk for the area.
It's a big risk. I wish I saw that earlier.
Tornadoes. The environment is primed. All that is needed is a trigger. Storms would initiate in northeastern Arkansas and slowly organize as they drifted northeast. One of these cells would organize into a powerful supercell and around 7 p.m. produce its first tornadoes. Locals and storm chasers would observe several brief, weak tornadoes, including 2 on the ground simultaneously as the storm approached the south side of Jonesboro, Arkansas. Racing out to the northeast of Jonesboro, the supercell would produce its 5th and first violent tornado.
One of the tornadoes, I think the Mayfield killed like 50 people, 54, 58 people. And this is... Oh, remember this? And remember, you wanna know what makes this worse? All these tornadoes are occurring at night. Every last one occurred at night. And you know, let's go. You know what's scarier than horror games or anything is tornado footage at night. You can see a lightning, and when it strikes, you can see their glimpse of the monster that's about to attack an entire town.
Would cause its first damage at 7:07 p.m. Central Standard Time, inflicting minor EF0 to EF1 damage early on before quickly intensifying to EF2 strength. The tornado then intensified to EF3 strength as it struck the city of Manette, causing severe damage, injuring many, and claiming its first life as the storm impacted the Manette Manor nursing home, causing significant damage to the structure. The tornado would continue to cause severe damage as it impacted the town of Leechville, Arkansas, and claimed another life as it destroyed a Dollar General. The tornado fluctuated in intensity as it crossed into Missouri before abruptly becoming violent as it approached the town of Hayti, causing EF4 damage and claiming 2 more victims, one of which was tragically a 9-year-old girl.
Oh my god.
The tornado would again become violent after crossing the Mississippi River into Tennessee, impacting the town of Tiptonville, where 3 more would perish. The tornado would claim its final victim as it impacted the town of Sandburg before finally dissipating at 8:36 p.m. Central Standard Time, after traveling for more than 80 miles and claiming 8 lives. This tornado, with estimated peak winds of 170 miles per hour, received an EF4 rating. Following this EF4, the storm began to cycle as it approached the Kentucky border. The tornado would inflict its first damage near the Woodland Mills area before racing off to the northeast and rapidly intensifying as it crossed the border into Kentucky. On approach to Casey, Kentucky, the tornado became violent, sweeping many structures off their foundations and badly damaging the fire department. The tornado claimed 1 life and injured several others before exiting Casey. Damage here would peak at low-end EF4 intensity. The tornado continued its track to the northeast, carving in deep scour marks and trenches into the ground, indicating it was still extremely violent. The tornado continued to inflict significant damage as it drew closer and closer to the
United
city of
States.
Kentucky, a city of more than 10,000
I know,
people.
it's good.
The debris ball is now coming into Mayfield. Send some prayers to Mayfield right now. Let's keep our friends in prayer.
The tornado roared into the southwestern fringes of Mayfield around 9:25 p.m. at EF4 intensity, obliterating several well-built structures, sweeping their foundations clean of debris and shredding a candle factory to the ground with more than 100 workers inside.
There's the candle factory.
Resulting in 8 deaths and numerous injuries. With it now clear that a violent tornado would hit the heart of Mayfield, the National Weather Service issued a tornado emergency.
This one had like 4 emergencies.
Yeah, Mayfield was swallowed.
Tornado emergency is worst case scenario. Basically what happens is that when a tornado gets so bad and severe, they issue tornado emergency, which means that there is a good chance that mass loss of life can occur. And people need to like take it seriously. And what happened, basically, what happens that there's like only like, I think there's only been like 210 around that amount tornado emergencies issued. This tornado had like 4?
By the ferocious winds of the tornado.
4 to 7.
The twister directly impacted the downtown area, destroying several well-built multi-story buildings as it carved its way through the center of the city. Businesses and residences alike were swept away into the deadly vortex as debris was lofted to more than 30,000 feet into the air. 22 would perish before the tornado's wrath had finished with the city. Inflicting high-end EF4 damage, the tornado exited Mayfield and drew its sights on the city of Benton, where another tornado emergency would be issued. The tornado would ultimately spare Benton, passing just to the north of town. However, in doing so, the tornado closed in on
Ace has such good chicken.
The tornado would slam into the lakeside community at 9:57 p.m., sweeping away many homes and inflicting EF4 damage before crossing into the land between the lake's recreation area and leaving a trail of deforestation in its wake. After crossing the lakes, the tornado began to close the distance to the town of Princeton, prompting another tornado emergency to be issued.
Number 2.
would impact the south side of Princeton at 10:17 p.m., devastating the Golf and Country Club community where many homes were destroyed, with some being completely swept to their foundations. The tornado would reach EF4 intensity here and claim 4 more lives before exiting the town, carving deep cycloidal marks into the earth.
Damn.
The tornado then approached the town of Dawson Springs, again prompting yet another tornado emergency as the
3.
mile-wide wedge roared into the town. At 10:32 p.m., the tornado made a direct hit on the residential side of town at EF4 intensity, flattening entire neighborhoods and shredding buildings down to their foundations. An apartment building here would be dismantled down to just a few interior walls on the lowest level, and several industrial buildings would be seriously damaged.
I don't really have a favorite YouTuber.
Dawson Springs would be lofted by the wrath of the Twister and was later found more than 120 miles away in Indiana.
Wait, what?
Damaged. A photograph from one of the homes in Dawson Springs would be lofted by the wrath of the Twister and was later found more than 120 miles away in Indiana.
Wow.
14 would tragically perish here before the monstrous winds of the Tempest moved on. The tornado continued on its track, impacting a few other small communities to the northeast of Dawson Springs at EF3 intensity, flattening or completely sweeping away many poorly built structures, while rapidly closing in on the small community of Bremen, where the National Weather Service had issued another tornado emergency.
Number 4. Holy shit. That is loud as shit. So this, I'm gonna search up how many emergencies have been issued. How many have been issued? There have been 194? And this tornado has 4 of them? This one has 4 tornado emergencies issued? That sent a shiver through my spine. For one tornado?
Obliterating several well-built structures and sleeping their slabs completely.
That's EF5 damage. Actually, if it's EF, that's all. It was a house that had like nothing on it. If it was well built, that's EF5 damage. If it's normally built, it's EF4 damage.
The ground was scoured. Several vehicles were thrown in the debris from slabbed homes were windrowed through the farmland by the violent winds. Footage of the monster tornado was captured by Eddie Knight as it passed just to his south.
That is wild.
Continuing through Bremen, the tornado would sweep away several more homes, scouring the foundation and driveway. Several poorly constructed residents and manufactured homes would be completely destroyed and swept away as the tornado finally left Bremen, taking 11 more lives with it. The tornado weakened after leaving Bremen and would continue at EF3 intensity, impacting a few other small communities as it tracked to the northeast. The supercell began to cross into less favorable conditions as storm coverage increased and its inflow was interfered with. Tracking for roughly another 40 miles through a mostly rural area, the tornado began to gradually weaken before finally dissipating at 11:48 p.m. near the Rough River Dam State Park.
That's
By
very.
the time the sun had risen on December 11th, thousands had been injured and 95 had lost their lives.
Tri-state.
The Western Kentucky tornado made up a vast majority of the casualties at 57 and had traveled for more than 165 miles in roughly 3 hours, leaving catastrophic damage in its wake. The daylight would reveal town after town after town had suffered devastating losses. In one evening, an invisible horror had changed the history of this region forever. After surveying the damage caused by the Western Kentucky tornado, it was determined that the Twister had peak winds of 190 miles per hour, earning it an EF4 rating. The poor construction quality of many of the homes in this region and the fact that the tornado occurred after dark certainly contribute to the tragically high death toll, becoming the single deadliest tornado since the Joplin EF5 10 years earlier. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of this tragedy was the fact that many of the people in the path of the storm were well warned and were fully aware of the disaster that was roaring towards them. However, many had nowhere else to go and were forced to ride out a violent tornado in their homes. I can't begin to imagine the horror of knowing such a calamity is racing towards you and you have nowhere to hide. When a town is hit by a violent tornado, it's never the same again, but time can help heal the wounds. 6 months later, I would revisit the track of this historic tornado to find that nature had already begun to undo the damage wrought by the twister. To my surprise, some of the homes in some of the hardest hit areas have already been rebuilt. However, most of the impacted areas are still reeling from the destruction and are going to need help with the recovery efforts for years to come. The path to recovery is going to be slow, and many of the scars of that night will never fully heal. But with time and hard work, these communities can bounce back from that tragic night in December.
You are uniquely you.
Bowling Green EF3.
So if you like your coffee,
What should I use?
By 10:30 p.m., a devastating EF4 tornado has been on the ground for nearly 100 miles, destroying everything in its path and obliterating the town of Dawson Springs, Kentucky. However, today is not that story. The tornadoes associated with the Quad State supercell deservedly get a lot of attention. However, the December 10th, 2021 tornado outbreak was so much more than just the Quad State supercell. Just to the south of the ongoing Western Kentucky tornado, the same potent atmosphere is coming together with deadly precision to unleash another family of devastating tornadoes. This is their story. As the Western Kentucky tornado is obliterating the town of Dawson Springs, Kentucky, a new complex of storms is beginning to initiate to its southwest. One of these embedded cells would quickly become supercellular as it developed a low-level rotating updraft called a mesocyclone. The storm continued to intensify, and around 10:30 p.m., circulation from this storm twisted its way to the ground below. The tornado began at 10:32 p.m., touching down in the northeastern fringes of New Bern, Tennessee, and quickly intensified to EF2 strength as it exited New Bern. The storm inflicted some more damage to a few homes as it moved to the northeast. The tornado then intensified considerably to EF3 strength as it destroyed a home, leaving only a few interior walls standing and ripped the entire third floor of another home off. The tornado remained at EF3 intensity as it entered the small town of Kenton, causing severe damage to many structures and ripping the roof and collapsing all exterior walls of another home. The tornado weakened but was still able to snap and uproot many trees as it left Kenton. The tornado then passed into a mostly rural area as it narrowly missed the town of Sharon just to its north.
Ooh.
The twister intensified again as it approached the town of Dresden. A home on the outskirts of
Dresden.
had its entire site
Town like that in my there's a town called Dresden, Illinois. One of the first places a private nuclear power plant was ever owned.
EF3 intensity and made its direct impact on Dresden, severely damaging the downtown area with many structures suffering major
Good.
structural damage, several of which were completely destroyed. After passing through the downtown area, the tornado obliterated a few small homes, sweeping them completely away. Severe tree damage occurred here as many trees were snapped, denuded, and uprooted by the winds of the twister. Damage here would peak at high-end EF3 intensity. The tornado would continue at EF3 intensity as it missed Cottage Grove just to the south, severely damaging some homes here and removing the second floor of another home. The tornado tornado would weaken slightly as it passed southeast of Puryear and destroyed a few homes at EF2 intensity, including a cabin which was completely destroyed. The tornado impacted a few more homes as it crossed Kentucky Lake into the Land Between the Lakes recreation area, where it would down thousands of trees to a similar extent as the Western Kentucky tornado, which had passed through the same area less than 2 hours earlier. The tornado would inflict more EF2 damage as it destroyed several manufactured homes south of Bumpus Mills and completely tore the roof off of a brick home. The tornado then narrowly missed the 4th Campbell Army Base just to the northeast, sparing numerous lives. The tornado then crossed Interstate 24, uprooting and snapping many trees and inflicting severe damage to several homes. Maintaining EF2 intensity, the tornado then directly struck the town of Pembroke, where several buildings were damaged, including the elementary school, which had much of its roof blown off. The tornado began to rapidly
Thank God no one was there.
dissipated just west of Elkton at 12:36 a.m. after traveling for more than 122 miles, making it the second longest track tornado of the outbreak behind only the Western Kentucky tornado. Remarkably, there were no fatalities from this tornado. Straight-line wind damage became dominant as the supercell cycled, quickly producing another tornado northwest of the city of Russellville. This tornado rapidly intensified to EF3 strength, destroying multiple structures, including a dairy farm which was completely destroyed. Trees were snapped, with some sustaining debarking as the twister moved through. A man sheltering in a bathtub would get lofted into the woods by the intense winds, grabbing onto a tree as his house was torn apart around him. He would survive but sustain injuries to his legs from flying debris.
Damn.
The tornado then moved through a mostly rural area before impacting Chandler's Chapel, where a church and school, as well as several other structures, would receive considerable damage. The tornado continued on past Chandler's Chapel through mostly rural farmland, gradually weakening and finally dissipating at 1:12 a.m., leaving one injured in a 28-mile path of destruction, earning an EF3 rating. As the Logan County tornado is weakening, a new circulation is developing to its south, and at 1:09 a.m., this new circulation snakes its way to the ground below, with its sights directly on the city of Bowling Green. The tornado began at 1:09 a.m., 10 miles southwest of Bowling Green, Kentucky, lightly damaging some trees. The tornado rapidly strengthened as it destroyed some barns and farm buildings at EF2 intensity. The 1,700-pound trailer would be thrown 300 yards into a ravine here as the tornado strengthened considerably, displaying a strange composition with an intense subvortex within the main tornado. This subvortex would destroy a well-built home, leaving only an interior bathroom and hallway standing. The tornado weakened somewhat as it crossed Van Meter Road, continuing to produce significant tree damage. As the tornado approached the outskirts of Bowling Green, it rapidly intensified to EF3 strength as it destroyed several homes, leaving only their interior walls standing. The twister continued on towards a few single-story homes which were completely destroyed, a couple of which were swept away. However, it was found that heavy debris had impacted these structures, likely being responsible for the extreme damage. The tornado crossed Interstate 165 as it entered Bowling Green. The twister destroyed several power lines, causing a significant portion of the city to lose power. A local news station would capture the moment on camera before it would lose power as the tempest roared into the city.
Nonetheless, this camera's shaking quite a bit from these storms. You can see right now, this is our AAA Systems camera.
Okay, lights are going out here on the west side of Bowling Green. There are power outages.
The tornado then strengthened even further to high-end EF3 strength as it impacted the Creekwood subdivision, obliterating numerous homes. Some of the homes here would be completely destroyed, being swept clean from their foundations. Wooden shrapnel and vehicles would become airborne missiles, embedding themselves into numerous structures as the tornado passed through, and tragically, numerous numerous fatalities would occur here, including an entire family of 7, all dying in the same house.
Jesus.
The tornado weakened as it left Creekwood before impacting more homes at high-end EF2 intensity and severely damaging some townhomes. The twister then crossed US 68 and destroyed numerous businesses, threw debris hundreds of yards and bent metal light poles down to the ground. The tornado then narrowly missed the Western Kentucky University campus, where a webcam would capture one of the only known photos of the tornado. The tornado tracked roughly along Nashville Road, strengthening back to EF3 intensity. Here, more businesses would fall victim to the tornado's ferocious winds as it narrowly missed downtown Bowling Green. While this first tornado was in progress, another smaller tornado would develop and track roughly parallel to the first, slowly closing the distance to the larger EF3. 2 tornadoes were terrorizing Bowling Green simultaneously. Weakening again, the main tornado moved back into a more residential area where hundreds of homes would receive significant damage before the tornado made a turn to the northeast, impacting the Indian Hills Country Club and causing light damage. The twister then impacted the Bowling Green GM assembly plant, where some mild damage occurred to the structure's roof before turning more to the northeast, simultaneously as the smaller EF2 was impacting the
You're back. I'm back.
The smaller twister soon dissipated as the larger Bowling Green tornado made another turn to the east, then northeast, rapidly strengthening to its peak intensity as it struck an industrial park along US 68. Multiple large industrial buildings would be completely destroyed here, one of which was leveled with its metal support beams being torn from their anchors to the foundation. Damage here would peak at high-end EF3 intensity. The tornado moved on to the northeast, heavily damaging a few more industrial buildings before beginning to gradually weaken as it left Bowling Green, heading into a more rural area. The twister continued to weaken before finally dissipating northeast of Bowling Green at 1:38 a.m. The parent supercell moved on to the northeast and would produce several more intense tornadoes, one of which would achieve EF3 status and claim another life near Saloma. Thankfully for the residents of Kentucky, the nightmare was finally ending. When the sun finally rose on December 11th, the true extent of the damage was revealed. A storm complex that had started in far western Tennessee had carved a damage path nearly 300 miles long, consisting of at least 15 different tornadoes. However, none could compare to the horror seen in Bowling Green. The tornado had claimed the lives of 17 and injured 63 others with estimated peak winds of 165 miles per hour, making it the second deadliest tornado of the outbreak behind only the western Kentucky tornado, 45 miles to its north. While most of the attention of the December 10th, 2021 tornado outbreak is focused on the much more famous tornadoes of the Quad State supercell, the other significant tornadoes of that terrible night still devastated those affected by it and deserve to have their stories told. With time, homes can be rebuilt, businesses reopen, crops resown, belongings regained. Neighbors, friends, family members, these are the people we can never replace. We should make it our mission to learn as much as we can from that dark night in December to better prepare ourselves against the wrath of Mother Nature, and make certain that those we lost will not be lost in vain.
April 27th, 2011, EF 5. Trench is 2 feet deep.
Wednesday, April 27, 2011. Though 97 tornadoes have already touched down over the past 2 days, residents of the southern and eastern United States are again on high alert as one of the most volatile atmospheric setups ever documented assembles across the region. Given the obvious danger, a major tornado outbreak is well forecast, but no amount of warning could possibly be enough for what is about to happen. In the 24-hour period from midnight to midnight, 216 tornadoes touched down, easily setting a new record for the most ever in one day. Of these, 11 will be rated EF4, and 4 will be rated EF5, numbers rarely seen before or since. The loss of life, health, and property is almost unfathomable, with more than 300 deaths, 3,000 injuries, and $10 billion in damages piling up before the day is over. To those who witnessed the events of April 27 as they happened, the seemingly unending onslaught of tornadoes means many individual storms blurred together into one horrific super outbreak. Though the massive amount of devastation makes sifting through the pieces difficult, each tornado was its own tragedy, and each irreparably damaged people's lives. These are some of their stories. The supercell which produced the Philadelphia EF5 tornado developed at around 1 p.m. south of Jackson, Mississippi. Moving quickly northwest at around 60 miles per hour, it had become severe by 125 and potentially tornadic by 203. At this point, one round of severe weather had already swept through the region early that morning, and most of Mississippi and Alabama was now in the calm before the storm that was to come in just a few hours. For many, this tornado occurred before they even realized the afternoon super outbreak had begun. This, combined with the rural and heavily forested area the tornado affected, led to minimal media coverage and, thankfully, a much reduced human impact. However, even given these factors, the sheer terrifying strength of the storm ensured that it would not be forgotten. The tornado began to form as its parent supercell passed briskly over the northeast edge of the city of Philadelphia. For a long time, the condensation funnel seemed just about to drop to the ground, but hesitated as bystanders watched on. Fortunately, it would not touch down until just before leaving the town at Northside Park, where it destroyed fencing, lighting, and dugouts on 2 baseball fields, as well as a historic log cabin, totaling around $250,000 in damages. After leaving the town, the tornado quickly grew to a width of around 900 yards as it began to track almost directly along Highway 21, which it would parallel for just over 13
Dude, my control needs to be greased. Yep. This is the southern states for you. We're storm chase today, guys.
I swear. Y'all notice they can't change directions. Alright, boys. I think that's about as close as I want her to get.
Yeah. It's going on the other side of the road. It's going around us.
It's going around us.
Hey, y'all, there is a tornado headed your way. Right here at Molly Cox's on the
Alright, let's get up under the bridge. Fuck this dude. Oh, crap, man. Boys, look at me, I'm storm chasers.
While still near Highway 21 in northeast Neshoba County, the tornado began producing EF5 level damage for the first time. Incredible. incredibly doing so without impacting any structures. Here, grass was torn out by the roots, and soil was gouged
Wow.
out of the ground, producing
Only
trenches
EF5s can do that, by the way. EF5 tornado, only an EF5 tornado can rip
this would become the
trenches like these.
card.
Not EF4s or
So intense,
3s.
rarely, if ever, been seen before or
No.
since. This is made even more unbelievable by the fact that it was traveling at almost 60 miles per hour while doing this.
Shit.
With a relatively small
That's
diameter
fast.
of around half a mile.
That is actually very strong for a tornado. If we're going 65 mile an hour, that's fast
The
too.
tornado weakened slightly to EF3 strength as it left Neshoba County, but quickly strengthened again to EF5 level as it finally left Highway 21 in northeast Kemper County. Though this was an extremely rural area, there were still structures impacted by the storm, with homes swept completely away to their foundations and cars thrown hundreds of yards and wrapped around trees.
Wrapped around trees, that's just mind-boggling.
In northeast Kemper County, the only 3 fatalities from the tornado would occur, as a strapped-down double-wide mobile home was thrown approximately 300 yards into the tree line and obliterated, with debris scattered hundreds of yards down the path. There was no evidence to indicate that the home impacted the ground at all on its way to the trees. Inside the mobile home was 78-year-old Maxine McDonald and 76-year-old Flory Green, the home's residents, as well as 85-year-old Johnny Green, their sister-in-law, who had driven over just minutes before to warn them of the approaching storm. She died like she lived, said Angie Clark, Green's daughter, always trying to help someone.
Aww. What a really good family member, though.
The tornado crossed into southeast Winston County, still at full EF5 strength, though it would soon begin to weaken. As it approached Highway 397, it was intercepted by storm chaser Reed Timmer and a full camera crew filming for the Discovery Channel show Storm Chasers. This encounter would produce the only high-definition footage of the storm, and undoubtedly some of the most impressive tornado footage ever recorded.
397 Julie from Claytown. Oh my God, look at that horizontal vortices on the left side. Horizontal vortices. All right, I know. Yeah, Dick, beware, okay? Beware. You're good. Beware.
Woo!
The Philadelphia, Mississippi EF5 tornado was on the ground for 30 minutes and traveled just over 28 miles. In all, it killed 3 people, injured 8 others, and caused $1.1 million in damages. Fortunately low numbers given its unbelievable intensity. Its claim to fame, the 2-foot-deep ground scouring, is still some of the most extreme ever recorded by any tornado, and gives it a legitimate claim to be one of the strongest tornadoes ever. However, as mind-boggling as the storm was, it would quickly be put on the back burner as hundreds more tornadoes tore through the region that afternoon and evening. At many other times, this might have been the most memorable tornado from an entire year. But on April 27, 2011, the worst was still yet to come.
This is the 1997 Gerald, Texas, one of the creepiest tornadoes ever recorded. The dead man walking tornado. One of the creepiest tornado pictures ever snapped.
Konstantin Riedman, and I'm a portfolio manager at Valent.
Like, at one point, a tornado looked like a dead man carrying a scythe before it struck with some of its strongest strength ever.
The day following the Memorial Day holiday weekend, many people in Texas just finished celebrating their Memorial Day holiday, with many Texans returning to work and continuing their lives as normal. Severe weather was a threat for that day. However, tornadoes were not expected to be the primary threat. As many got to work, those in the Austin metro were expecting some thunderstorms in the afternoon and evening, but nothing too out of the ordinary for many. By the end of the day, the state of Texas would have witnessed history made in front of their very eyes. An outbreak whose story was dominated by a single...
This tornado went southwest, didn't it?
Whose track and overall movement was one of a kind. A tornado whose damage was so violent, the damage observed has gone on record as some of the most extreme ever observed from a tornado. While overshadowed by the other major tornadoes that occurred in the late 90s alongside the two super outbreaks that are often brought up, it was a tornado that, despite not being talked about nowadays, left its impact in history on the small community of Gerald, Texas. More importantly, a tornado that was one of the first to expose the flaws with the Fujita scale and led to the development of the enhanced Fujita scale. 25 years later, the 1997 Gerald tornado's name lives in infamy as one of the most important singular tornadoes in meteorological history. Today, I will explain the story behind the Gerald F5 tornado, the history, the impacts, the importance regarding its placement in meteorological history, and its contributions to the development of the enhanced Fujita scale. Welcome to Nature's Fury. The 1997 tornado season before the 27th was relatively quiet. The major notable outbreaks that occurred that year happened on January 24th, where an F4 tornado tore through Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and the outbreak was also notable for an F2 tornado that went through downtown Tuscaloosa, Alabama. The most major outbreak so far occurred on March 1st, where 3 F4 tornadoes were observed, 2 in Arkansas in traditional Tornado Alley, a nice change of pace regarding the lack of tornadoes from the 1997 season. Just to the south of Tornado Alley lies Austin, Texas, the state capital. Roughly 40 miles to the north-northeast of Austin lies the small community of Gerald, Texas. The community's population by 1997 was roughly 410, and one of the most common areas where residents lived was the Double Creek Estates subdivision, which once contained 38 homes made of brick and stone. There is very little history regarding the town of Gerald itself before what occurred on that fateful day on May 27th, 1997, but afterwards, a single tornado would change everything for that small community for the rest of time. Despite the relatively quiet start to the 1997 severe weather season, things were about to change in Texas. A major severe weather outbreak was predicted to occur on May 27th, 1997. However, the setup and overall conditions that were in place were conducive for non-tornadic supercells, and yet, tornadic supercells occurred anyway. The environmental conditions makes the meteorological synopsis for the Gerald outbreak one of the most unique out of any tornado outbreak in meteorological history. Now, there's going to be some meteorological jargon that will be used to explain this whole setup, and I will be simplifying things to make things easy to understand for people who are unfamiliar with the in-depth specifics of meteorology and how severe weather works. However, the setup for the Gerald tornado is a major factor as to why the tornado itself was so unique, and why it caused the damage it did. One cannot talk about Gerald without mentioning the setup. The expectations going into the 27th would be that there would be a possibility for severe thunderstorms across the southern United States, specifically in Texas and Louisiana, with the primary threats being large hail, strong winds, but notably, the threat of tornadoes was not as significant as the threats of hail and strong winds. Why was that? Well, the conditions in Texas that day created a setup that did not have all of the ingredients present to favor a large-scale outbreak of tornadoes. Beginning with the low-pressure system that influences how outbreaks occur in the first place. For most tornado outbreaks in this location, the upper-level low-pressure system would be present over portions of Oklahoma. In the case of the Gerald outbreak, the main influencing upper-level low-pressure system was located across the northern plains, with the upper-level low-pressure system being nearly 1,000 miles away from where the storms were expected to occur. The upper-level low-pressure system would present very little influence on the cells that formed in Texas. To add on to the issue of the low-pressure system being far away from the cells themselves, of the 5 ingredients that create the best suitable environment for tornado development, that being wind shear, helicity, cape, moisture, and lapse rates, there is a significant lack of helicity and wind shear. For the sake of this video, helicity is the term used to describe the ability for a thunderstorm to form a curve and a hook echo. And the hook echo is important for the best possible structure for a strong tornado. And wind shear is the change of wind velocity over a short distance. There was enough vertical wind shear to support the development of supercell thunderstorms. However, combined with the relatively weak winds in the lower levels of the atmosphere, the environment did not seem conducive for tornadic thunderstorms. The helicity was even worse off. A report from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln concluded that the helicity found was more akin to that of non-severe back-building storms. Back-building storms simply refer to storms that form and move down a frontal boundary. The storm relative helicity from the surface up to 3 kilometers is roughly 60 meters squared per second squared. Typically, that value is anywhere from 150 to 300 in significant tornadoes. When adequate, large amounts of shear keep the storms moving fast, and large amounts of helicity keep tornadoes on the ground for longer. However, in the case of Gerald, those factors were minimal. The other 3 factors in tornado development...
Look what Tucson has, and what rep.
A cape is a measurement...
Digital key? They're really saying that... They all... What do you mean? It's like your phone? I'd rather not have my phone be a key. I'd rather have my keys be a key. Bro, I don't know what the heck I'm talking about.
Unstable the atmosphere is. The higher the cape, the more energy available for thunderstorms and the tornadoes to use. Cape in the area ranged from 5,000 joules per kilogram, peaking near 6,500 joules per kilogram in the mid-afternoon near Calvert, Texas. Keep in mind, cape values of 4,000 joules per kilogram is considered extreme for tornadic development according to the Storm Prediction Center. Low-level cape, which is now commonly referred to as 3-kilometer cape, which is just cape measured low in the atmosphere, was even more insane, with areas of 3-kilometer cape in the Dallas-Fort Worth area measuring 249 joules per kilogram. Normally, the 3-kilometer cape is around 75 to 150 joules per kilogram in the Dallas-Fort Worth area at this time of year. To make things simple, the high values of cape in the 3-kilometer cape was enough to allow for rapid storm growth. The mid-level lapse rates, another signature of how unstable the atmosphere is by measuring temperature differences between 10 to 20,000 feet in the air, was negative 7.5 degrees Celsius per kilometer. Lapse rates that extreme meant that thunderstorm updrafts, the ability for how well air can move up in the atmosphere, had the capability to accelerate properly. The moisture was abundant as well, with dew points, a measurement of what temperature is required for 100% humidity, being in the low to mid-70s, with a dry line, a boundary between high and low dew points, present across central Texas. The temperatures seen in the area were in the mid to upper 80s. The Cape alone was so extreme that any tornado that could touch down and take advantage of that Cape could put down a monster, and with barely enough shear and helicity present to allow for a monster tornado to occur. Going into the 27th, there was a lot of uncertainty about the development of tornadic supercells, but a large amount of confidence in the development of supercells in general. The Storm Prediction Center issued a moderate risk for severe weather across east central Texas and western Louisiana, citing the primary threats being strong straight-line winds and large hail. The 27th came, and the events began to unfold. On the morning of the 27th, a cold front was forcing southwest from a surface low that formed near Fayetteville, Arkansas, and the surface low moved to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Due to the southwest movement of the low-pressure system, the storms that formed that day moved generally to the southwest. Around noon, the cold front sagged
I'm liking this building. I'm gonna call it the Abterian. Let's call it the Abbott TA City or Abbott City Service Center. It's got this is gonna be a shop. That's a bank. That's gonna be a library. That's gonna be a storm shelter. That's gonna be a little pool you can sit in, and there's gonna be like a little clinic.
Providing additional lift for the thunderstorms to take advantage of. At this time, a line of thunderstorms began to form along the cold front, extending to the southwest along I-35. On satellite, the thunderstorms formed what seemed to be like a zipper being undone. The thunderstorms were moving extremely slow. Thunderstorms began to form along the cold front, extending to the southwest along I-35. On satellite, the thunderstorms formed what seemed to be like a zipper being undone. The thunderstorms were moving extremely slow, roughly 5 miles per hour to the southwest. At this time, were moving extremely slow, roughly 5 miles per hour to the southwest. Keep in mind that the average movement speed for supercell thunderstorms range from 40 to 50 miles per hour, and the movement speed for isolated cells is roughly 12 miles per hour. At 12:54 p.m. Central Daylight Time, the Storm Prediction Center issued a tornado watch for portions of East Texas and western Louisiana, citing the possibility of isolated tornadoes. the tornadoes would be confined to a narrow corridor of the intersections of the boundaries formed within the storm system due to the weak vertical wind shear. The primary threats were that of hail up to 3.5 inches in diameter and damaging wind gusts of up to 80 miles per hour. At 12:50 p.m., the first severe thunderstorm warning was issued for the cell that would eventually produce the Gerald tornado. And at 1:21 p.m., the storm would produce its first tornado warning, producing its first tornado outside of Lorena, Texas, and dropping multiple other tornadoes as the storm would begin to seemingly create new updrafts quickly. In southwestern McLennan County, an F3 tornado touched down and tossed a car and a pickup truck several hundred feet, and destroyed a residence and farm building while on the ground for 20 minutes. Lon Curtis, alongside a forecaster from the Fort Worth office, were tracking the storm, reporting a tornado forming south of the parent cell. Another significant tornado touched down near Morgan's Point Resort, causing near total destruction to trees near Woodland, Texas. The tornado was on the ground for 20 minutes and only moved about 1.6 miles. Another brief tornado rated F0 touched down near Stillhouse Dam. As the storm moved into Salado, the velocity couplet started to intensify significantly. The thunderstorm dropped 3 brief tornadoes ranging from the northwest of Prairie Down, Texas, just to the north of Gerald, Texas, ranging from F0 to F2 strength. Of the latest tornado, Lon Curtis stated, "It looked like it was virtually stationary, although the portion of the vortex which was in ground contact was wandering in a pasture about 0.3 of a mile away from me." Between 3:10 and 3:20 p.m. the cloud-based Central Daylight Time, the Gerald tornado dropped. After dropping 3 tornadoes from near Prairie Dale, Texas, just to the north of Gerald, the storm produced a 4th tornado at 3:40 p.m., the infamous Gerald tornado.
Creepy ass tornado. That tornado. It's known as the Dead Man's Walking tornado.
After touching back down, the tornado took a southwesterly turn, crossing county roads 308, 305, then 307, stripping approximately 525 feet of asphalt off the roads.
Jesus, that's insane.
Reported a multi-vortex pattern with several
Yeah, that's EF5 damage. Asphalt can't be stripped off by an EF4.
Minutes, distinctly changing to form a large wedge tornado. After crossing the county road 305 and 307 intersection, destroying a business on the corner, the Gerald tornado moved into the Double Creek Estate subdivision to the west of Gerald proper, growing to its maximum width of 3/4 of a mile wide. People in Gerald proper rushed back home to the subdivision, thinking it would be the safest place for this event.
It actually was not.
Theory, but in retrospect, ended up costing many of those who fled back home their lives. For the next 2 to 3 minutes, the tornado soared over
Dude, the inflow jet on that thing.
2 to 3 minutes of nature's fury at its most extreme. What can only be described as pure hell on Earth. Being inside a tornado with winds exceeding 260 miles per hour, for a span of time that is not seen as very long to most, but for those who were there, those couple of minutes felt like an eternity. With all houses in the subdivision having no basements or tornado shelters, it was a miracle that people survived. The tornado, after stalling over the subdivision, moved into Woodland before lifting. Due to the movement of the supercell, the events associated with tornadic supercell thunderstorms happened in the opposite order. First was the tornado, then the brief moment of peace, then the strong winds, heavy rain, and hail came after. After the Gerald tornado lifted, the thunderstorm continued to produce multiple tornadoes. In the southern portion of Williamson County, an F3 tornado crossed into Travis County. Most notably, a moment of heroism from the manager of the Albertsons grocery store, who was a victim of the 1979 Wichita Falls, Texas tornado. He saw the tornado coming, gathered all the attendants in the middle of the store, and moved those in the store to the meat locker, saving several lives. Severe damage was done to the grocery store, while multiple other structures had relatively minor damage, with the damage ranging from F0 to F2 strength. Later, on the shore of Lake Travis, the thunderstorm produced its final tornado as a discrete supercell. In F4, that destroyed a well-built building, and across the street, a house was destroyed with walls knocked down. Continuing into the Hazy Hills subdivision, numerous houses were destroyed. Several houses did survive, but the damage left the houses uninhabitable. The tornado continued moving to the west-southwest, causing mostly F2 damage before lifting after passing the crest of a small hill. Only 1 person died from this tornado, and 5 others were injured. From this point onward, the dry line and cold front merged together to become a single frontal boundary, forming a squall line that absorbed the discrete supercell that produced most of the tornadoes of that day. The squall line moved through the San Antonio area, pushing southward. A couple weak, short-lived tornadoes spawned across the line, and a wind gust of 122 miles per hour was observed on the west side of San Antonio at the Kelly Air Force Base. Another tornado watch was issued at 8:23 p.m., citing isolated tornadoes, hail of up to 3 inches in diameter, and winds of 80 miles per hour. Flash flooding also became a concern, as the heavy rainfall was frequent along the squall line, 1 dying due to the flash flooding near a creek in Austin, Texas. Strong winds and large hail were present. Strong winds ranging from 58 to nearly 80 miles per hour were observed in south central Texas. The largest hail was reported to be nearly 4 inches in diameter inside Cedar Park. Numerous reports of damaging winds and hail were reported in Texas alongside most of the southeastern United States. But as the storms moved out, the recovery effort began almost immediately. While most of the tornadoes were relatively weak and thus for most locations the damage was minimal, the worst of the damage was relegated to a single, small subdivision outside of Jarrell, Texas. A subdivision that just got swept off the face of the earth.
Altogether, it lasted about 10 minutes, but it seemed like it was forever. There wasn't a ceiling in the next room, and I'm looking and I'm pushing myself back down, and she's sitting there going, "What are you doing?" I said, "There's nothing out there."
God just wiped the entire place off the face of the earth too.
Tornadoes that raked central Texas. Although twisters as large as this are very rare in the Lone Star State, tornadoes themselves are not. Texas averages more than 100 tornadoes every year. That's more than twice as many as any other state. Of course, tornado tracking is now a major science, but even with advanced warnings, why were so many in Jarrell, Texas killed in this storm?
Shortly after the tornado moved through the subdivision, the residents who survived, the townspeople of Jarrell, and the first responders came to find nothing. Every house in the subdivision, all 38 of them, completely obliterated. At least 12 vehicles, completely demolished. Any and all large debris that would normally be present with the aftermath of a violent tornado was absent. All that was left was small bits and pieces of debris, with the concrete slabs being the only reminder of what was once there. As first responders came, the sheer scope of the loss of life and damage was seen firsthand. 27 people died in the Jarrell tornado, all of them in the subdivision. All the houses had no underground shelter or basement due to the soil composition in the area, consisting mostly of limestone. Many of those families took the right actions in order to minimize loss of life, but many of them died anyway. Most of those who fled back to their homes from work to stay with their families also ended up perishing. The Egos, who were at school, decided it would be better to take shelter at their home.
Come to TurboTax and don't do your taxes.
All members of the Ego family lost their lives that day. The Ruiz brothers heard the tornado was coming and made the decision to search for more sturdy shelter than their trailer, going to the Mooring family house, where the brothers and the Mooring family perished. Their trailer, on the other hand, was unscathed by the tornado. Identifying the bodies was a challenge in its own right. Body parts torn so violently that coroner's investigators were having difficulty identifying all the victims. Many of the first responders were traumatized by the event itself, such as Mark McAdams, unable to explain the true ferocity of the situation.
Is it hard for you to talk about what you saw?
Images of body parts sporadically tossed apart. Images of a dead mother holding onto her child as tightly as possible, slammed into debris. The lack of large debris and the sheer violence observed
Thank God.
the human life and the confusion identifying bodies. This garnered the Jarrell 1997 tornado reputation for some of the most extreme damage ever observed in the aftermath of a tornado. To add on to the tragedy, an ominous image seen before the tornado hit the subdivision, representing a dead man walking, an Indian myth of two tornadoes forming what seems to be a man walking. The myth stating that those who come across it will die. An ominous myth that has been heavily associated with the Jarrell tornado. Of those who survived, they don't even know how they survived the disaster in the first place. The governor of Texas, George W. Bush, toured the area a couple days after, stating to the press,
The devastation was mind-boggling. It's hard to believe if you're looking at a patch of earth where literally the life was sucked out of it.
Bush declared a disaster declaration for Jarrell, asking for federal help from FEMA, a request that was ultimately denied due to the state of Texas already having the funds to support the area. The National Weather Service, alongside members of the National Institute of Standards and Technology, including a young Dr. Lung Fawn, conducted damage surveys. The tornado got an F5 rating with no hesitation, with many National Weather Service members still vividly remembering the damage seen in Gerald to this day. Since then, the town of Gerald has rebuilt, and now there are multiple storm shelters in place in order to prevent a situation like what happened 25 years ago from happening again. Visible scars still left on the earth in the neighborhood, and emotional scars surround and are present with many of the people.
Dude, the entire family's just completely snapped out of existence. It's truly sad.
Is one that nobody living in Gerald could ever forget. Looking back 25 years later, the 1997 Gerald tornado isn't as well known or is talked about as much as the Moore 99 tornado or the super outbreaks that are often mentioned today. But the Gerald 1997 tornado still remains as one of the most important tornadoes in meteorological history, and a tornado that for the residents of Gerald can never be forgotten. This is where most stories surrounding the Gerald tornado end, and originally, this is where it would have ended if it weren't for something I found by complete accident. A side of the story of Gerald that is not mentioned nor has been mentioned to the broader public to my knowledge. A story that makes the Gerald tornado many more times important to the history of studying tornadoes and in meteorological history in general. A story that comes from the only researcher who I called by name who conducted damage surveys, Dr. Longfawn, who conducted research that would culminate in a report that would change the way we observe and document damages from tornadoes for the rest of time. Firstly, some background on Dr. Fawn. Dr. Fawn is an engineer and leader of the Structures Group in the Materials and Structural Systems Division at the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Dr. Fawn specializes in analyzing performances of structures and materials subject to extreme loadings and field investigations of damage to the built environment caused by natural or man-made disasters. Before Gerald, he conducted investigations into earthquakes, specifically the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake and the 1994 Northridge earthquake. The Gerald tornado was his first tornado damage investigation, and since then, he has conducted investigations into damages to structures from weather-related disasters, such as the Moore 1999 tornado, the 2011 Joplin tornado, and Hurricanes Katrina, Rita, Irma, and Michael, just to name a few.
Guy's got a record.
What is the importance of the story of Gerald? Well, in April 1998, he released a report titled The Fujita Tornado Intensity Scale, a critique based on observations of the Gerald tornado of May 27, 1997. A report that would go to shape the future of analyzing and interpreting wind speeds from damage observed from a tornado. Dr. Fawn's report would become the basis for the creation of the Enhanced Fujita Scale, and how the scale works, and one of the first major reports from a government agency to publicly list the flaws with the Fujita Scale by applying structural engineering considerations instead of the damage descriptions from the Fujita Scale.
Hey, it's me, your skin. Some cleansers get us clean, but take my moisture. CeraVe cleansers help me make...
The report is roughly 20 pages long, and I'm surprised that this report isn't often mentioned considering how important this is to the Enhanced Fujita Scale's development. So, in preparation for talking about the paper, I went out of my way to get an interview scheduled with Dr. Fawn myself. And after a month of talking, we were finally able to speak to each other, and I asked about his findings and what he observed from the damage in Gerald.
No way.
First of all, thank you so much for your time. I know you're very busy and all that, especially with all this going on, but it's been 25 years since Gerald, and I felt like it would be appropriate to talk to someone who was there, and so I have my list of questions on my other monitor, and so if you don't have any objections, I can go ahead and get this started. So, could you describe in detail the damage that you saw in the Double Creek Estates Division specifically? Mainly because, and this kind of goes into the question afterward, is that it's considered to be some of the most violent damage that we've seen from a tornado. Pointing to reports from coroners saying they had trouble identifying bodies due to pieces of bodies just being thrown all around, and the complete and total lack of small debris in the areas that were affected. So, what exactly did you see on the ground and in the air?
Yes, it's been 25 years now, so it's not easy to describe the damage in detail. But I remember the Double Creek Estate subdivision is where the tornado damage path width got widened to its maximum width, right, about 3/4 of a mile. This is also where most of the fatalities occur in this subdivision. what I remember, the structure there consisted mainly of single-family wood frame construction, about 15 years old, so it's not old construction. Of typical slab on grade construction type, wood frame on top of a concrete slab. There were no basement or above ground or underground shelter that we could see there because of the geology of the area. It was very visible from the air that most of the houses in this subdivision had been swept clean from the foundation. It's very striking. You could see slab after slab after slab from about 100, 200 meter helicopter hovering above the subdivision. We could see that everything wiped clean off of the foundation. So those are what I remember. The reason what we saw in Jarrow and conclude that is doesn't need to take an F5 to call this kind of damage that we observed. Because what you pointed out, the connection between the sill plate from the between the upper structure and the foundation was not by anchor bolt. It was pneumatically driven nails, right?
That issue with the sill plates goes further into the construction of the houses, which I will briefly go over, as well as the report in general. Basically, the report here argues that the minimum winds needed to do the level of damage that we saw in Jarrow was equivalent to that of an F3 tornado at least. The report comes to this conclusion by using structural engineering considerations and the overall building quality of the structures in the estate's neighborhood to determine what wind speeds were necessary in order to completely level the houses off their foundations. Anything that was equivalent to that, of at least F3 winds or higher, could reduce the damage seen in Jarrow. The other reason behind why the winds could be that low was that the tornado itself was stationary for so long, which Dr. Fong took into consideration when writing his report. Going over the specific notes listed in the report, the connections between the sill plates and the foundations were not as strong as those between the sill plates and the wood frames. The sill plates had been connected to the foundations by nails, not anchor bolts, and there was no evidence of anchor bolts or steel straps used at the few random inspections that were conducted. The issues of anchor bolts, Dr. Fong clarified in his interview, stating that all houses had no evidence of anchor bolts. These inspections found that the building codes at the time were not being followed. So when I asked about how significant things would change if the building codes are put in place alongside the rating of the tornado, he told me the problems with the Fujita scale, how much of an impact the building codes would have to the damage seen in Jarrow, and the further implications if things were not changed and tornadoes kept getting misrated.
Yes, it's likely. To answer your last question, the problem is this. It was rated an F5 based on the observed damage in accordance with the F scale at the time by the
Right, yeah, Ted Fujita.
and we at the National Weather Service don't see things differently at all. Their job is they're tasked with rating tornado. So they have the tool they use is the Fujita scale, and based on the damage classification, the discipline of damage that they have, it clearly to them an F5.
You want to know why we ride? Maybe it's because everything looks better with a fresh coat.
And it's not their opinion. They are doing their job using the tool that's available to them. The problem with that is the tool is flawed. So that we point out, if you look at this damage description, we cannot tell the difference in terms of wind speed based on the quality of the construction. You might come up with an overclassification. An overclassification of tornado corrupt the tornado database, which eventually lead to the design criteria that is so substantially higher than actuality, that caused everyone to throw their hand up and say, we cannot design for tornado, it's too strong. And that would become an excuse for builder, designer, constructor to continue to build weak structure, and that get damaged due to wind speed that we think could be designed for. The reason, what we saw in Jarrow and conclude that it doesn't need to take an F5 to cause this kind of damage that we observed.
When I asked him about whether or not the issues were widely known at this point before Jarrow, Dr. Fon said that the issues with the Fujita scale were not widely addressed before this point.
No, actually, Jarrow was the first event that brought that situation up. That observation of the scale might be flawed in terms of relating the damage observed with the possible wind speed range that could cause the damage. So no, there were no indication before Jarrow, Texas tornado that we could notice. So there was no attention to that scale prior to Jarrow.
While Dr. Fon's report was not the first report to address the issues with the Fujita scale, the reports released before Dr. Fon's paper did not have as much influence as Dr. Fon's report, because the other reports did not address the issues well enough or did not propose well-thought-out solutions to the problem. A paper written by Joseph Miner, James McDonald, and Kishore Mehta from 1977 points out some issues with the Fujita scale. However, the nearly 200-page report does not seem to address how to fix the issues stated with the Fujita scale proper, nor does the report explicitly recommend a revisement of the Fujita scale proper. It wasn't like Dr. Fujita himself was unaware about this either, but his message was not widely received as well as Dr. Fon's. In his memoir, Dr. Fujita proposed a modification that would recognize the difference in the quality of structure. However, this suggestion was not enough to fix the issue. Further looking into Dr. Fon's report and reading the report a bunch of times over, the way the report was laid out and the way the research was conducted is very similar to how the current enhanced Fujita scale assesses damage. Dr. Fon said that his report was the first to conduct research and come up with a report on a tornado that resembles the current system we have today, and that numerous reports afterwards would continue to push for something like the enhanced Fujita scale.
It definitely provided the impetus and galvanized the wind engineering community to move forward with the revision and development of the EF scale, for sure. And the fact that it's cited in these very influential paper you mentioned by the Weather Service and by, I think the other one is Texas Tech University, meant that it really provide maybe the first justification for moving forward with revising the scale. So I'm very glad that happened.
Dr. Fon would continue to be involved in the development of the enhanced Fujita scale, stating,
yeah, so I was part of the NIST team that articulated the problem, publicizing it, formulated the need for an improved tornado rating scale, and actually worked within this to provide funding for this grantee. In this case, Texas Tech University. Their involvement was coming from our funding at the time to work on this specific problem of developing the improved scale for in collaboration with the National Weather Service. I was also serving on the committee that Texas Tech University put together that include people, wind engineer from Texas Tech University, meteorologist from National Weather Service, structural engineer, wind engineer from NIST. So this committee come together under this grant that NIST gave to Texas Tech University to develop the EF scale. So that's my involvement.
Now, some people who are watching this who are tornado historians may believe that I'm overhyping the importance of this report. There already were a couple reports that stated that the Fujita scale's wind speed estimates were too high and that the flaws of the scale were already known about before Jarrow. While those points are valid, Dr. Fon's report was one of the first, if not the first major report that used an F5 tornado that left an entire neighborhood with nothing but slab foundations left to expose the flaws of the Fujita scale. He then brought it forward to the attention of the larger scientific community, and his report was the first major report that explained what had to be done in order to improve the Fujita scale. When looking at the article on the Enhanced Fujita scale on the SPC's website, they cite Gerald and More 99 as to why the Enhanced Fujita scale began development, or at least tornadoes that exposed the flaws of the Fujita scale.
Chevrolet has incredible deals right now.
I already just bought a car. I'm on a loan, my guy.
While this story regarding the background of the Enhanced Fujita scale and the 1997 Gerald tornado is not often brought up today, this report is what makes Gerald one of the most important tornadoes in meteorological history. Dr. Fahn's report laid the groundwork for what would become the Enhanced Fujita scale, a scale that we now use for every tornado here in the United States. With Dr. Fahn's report being the first report to advocate for a revision to the Fujita scale, its importance to the meteorological community is massive. The Enhanced Fujita scale isn't perfect, far from it, but it is a system that is in place today, and the importance of Dr. Fahn's research is something that cannot be stated enough. 25 years ago, the world saw what was one of the most unusual and violent tornadoes occur in an environment and setup that was not believed to be conducive for violent tornado development. For those in the small community of Gerald, Texas, the 1997 tornado was an event that they will never forget for the rest of their lives. Many people passed away that day, even those who followed proper safety protocols during a tornado. Gerald is one of the few tornadoes where the saying that loss of life was likely if people weren't either underground or in a shelter was sadly true and not hyperbolic in the slightest. The damage seen was some of the most extreme ever observed from a singular tornado, and the remnants of human bodies being split and scattered is an image that nobody in the area could ever forget, even if they tried. Gerald's legacy lives on through both the damage that it caused and also through Dr. Fahn's report. Dr. Fahn's report was a cornerstone report that exposed the flaws of the Fujita scale and led to the development of the system we use every day to rate and assess tornado damage. While reports were available already that suggested the flaws of the Fujita scale before Dr. Fahn's report, the methods used to expose the flaws of the Fujita scale were not the same as Dr. Fahn's, and did not explicitly advocate for the revision of the Fujita scale entirely. His report was important to meteorological history by laying out the groundwork for what would eventually become the Enhanced Fujita scale, something that cannot be said enough. It is a story that many people seem to not know about when talking about Gerald. A quarter of a century later, the people of Gerald will remember the horrors that occurred 25 years ago, and now the town has multiple storm shelters in the town to make sure that the past doesn't repeat itself.
At least they learn from their
Who lost
past.
their lives will not be forgotten, not by the people of Gerald, nor by the people who have researched the storm. The Gerald tornado may not be talked about as often as it should be, but the tornado will live on as one of the most important tornadoes in history, and the utter power seen when a tornado stalls over a residential area. Wait, don't go yet. I got some stuff I need to talk about that's quite important. There's some things I need to say that I will go over while I let all my sources list out on the screen. First of all, I want to give a massive thank you to Dr. Long Fahn, Simu, and the Public Affairs Office at NIST. They were all very nice and cooperative with what was going on in my life, and I could not have done this documentary or this subject justice without interviewing Dr. Fahn. I seriously cannot believe that he agreed to an interview, and I am still really excited about how well it turned out. I also want to say thank you for the compliments towards me and how much time I've poured into this project, to a point of where Dr. Fahn had to reread his report that came out 24 years ago because of how much detail I went into with my questions, which just blows my mind. For those who want to see the full uncut interview with myself and Dr. Fahn, that will be in a link in the description on my second channel. I also tried to get in contact with the SPC and Tim Coleman, courtesy of Dr. John Knox from UGA, who forwarded me to him, but I did not receive a response from Tim nor the SPC, though the SPC was because I had to go through their Public Affairs Office, and we all know how long that takes. Okay, so, funnily enough, after I was midway through editing this entire video, and after I got done fully editing the synopsis, I got a response from Tim Coleman giving me some email addresses to people who work at the SPC. Due to the fact that I don't want this out in mid-June, I didn't contact the SPC, so thank you, Tim Coleman, for actually responding to my email. I wasn't expecting that to happen. Special thanks to Thomas Schwent, Diego, and Devin Williams, who proofread the script alongside my usual proofreaders who typically read it through and change any grammatical errors found in my scripts. Thomas, Diego, and Devin were the ones who specifically made sure I didn't get anything too wrong with the synopsis and actual timeline of events, since they know a lot more about severe weather than I do. Thank you for not making me sound like an idiot. To those who want to see more stuff from me, whether it be weather documentaries or some stupid retrospective or reviews and stuff I like, it would help a lot if you subscribed to the channel, gave the video a like, commented your thoughts, and shared it around. There really hasn't been a good documentary on Gerald on YouTube that wasn't a made-for-TV special, and I felt like I did the topic justice. At least I hope I did. I have gotten a lot of requests to do another weather documentary since the April 2011 super outbreak documentary from last year, and I hope this is worth the wait. I do have more videos I'm working on in the background, but not all of them are related to weather. On the note of supporting me, if you also want to waste money on me and support me at the same time, I have also opened up a Patreon for my videos. At the time of recording this, I have not finalized pricings, but the highest tier will be able to request documentary subjects and video subjects to me to cover as long as I'm not putting myself in pain. But you'll still get your usual having your name at the end or having a shout out on the channel or something like that, as you see in most Patreons. Otherwise, I have nothing else to say. I'm Alfaria, and next time I will cover a much less serious topic, as in, I have an entire retrospective on as you see in most
2021 Texas deep freeze. I remember that.
Whether you're taking the back roads or navigating busy city streets, make sure you're doing it in a vehicle you love.
Winter storms. One of the more simple types of storm systems that occur across the world. At least in continent, rarely do fatalities end up being over 50 in the United States. But there are exceptions. There's a few significant winter storm events that are remembered to this day, two of them specifically on a national level. One of those is the 1993 storm of the century, and the other one, the topic of today's video, is the costliest natural disaster observed in the United States. That event was the 2021 Texas deep freeze, also known as the 2021 Valentine's Week winter outbreak. In February 2021, a blast of Arctic air swept across the United States, bringing with them two winter storms which swept across the eastern and central portions of the United States. Most of the states affected saw significant impacts, but nothing outright historic in terms of winter precipitation. Except for the Lone Star State. Record snowfall and ice alongside the bitter Arctic air left the state of Texas virtually frozen over. For nearly a week, snow and ice encompassed the vast majority of Texas. Pipes burst due to the extreme cold, and the Texas power grid failed across the majority of the state.
The entire power grid was like suffering.
The official estimate from the state of Texas alone places the damage total from the 2021 Texas deep freeze at least $195 billion of damages, while newer estimates suggest that the damage total could be as high as $300 billion in damages in the state. But what exactly led to this horrific series of events to happen in the first place? Well, that's what I'm here to do today. Today, I will be taking a deep dive into the 2021 Texas deep freeze, giving a brief overview on how winter weather setups work, the synopsis of the event, the preparations taken, an overview of what happened meteorologically and on the ground, the response, the aftermath, and the significance of the event. Welcome to Nature's Fury. Winter weather is often a general term that combines a bunch of different weather systems into one big group, all connected because it requires the air itself to be cold. There are winter storms, a storm system that contains a combination of heavy snow, blowing snow, and/or dangerous wind chills. In terms of winter precipitation, there's snow, sleet, and freezing rain. What type of precipitation occurs is related to the temperatures and a series of layers in the air that can cause the precipitation to melt or freeze on the way down to the ground. There are blizzards, winter storms but with high winds, which can bring whiteout conditions, ice storms, which produce at least 1/4 of an inch of ice onto exposed surfaces, and then there are Arctic blasts, which is the general term given to massive temperature drops behind an Arctic front. So what do you need for winter precipitation? Moisture, lift, and of course, cold air. Now, the issue of cold air isn't an issue further north, but for our topic today of Texas, that tends to be problematic. Winter storms are rare in the southern and southeastern United States because freezing temperatures do not last, or when it does get below freezing, it's right behind a cold front. And considering that most cold fronts have warm fronts attached to them, it's easy to see as to why the South doesn't get winter weather that much. But it doesn't mean that it can't happen. The best bet for winter weather is a low-pressure system's northern half. In winter storms, this is where the most snowfall typically occurs. There's enough moisture there due to the dryland setup being further south, there isn't a warm front, and there's enough lift for winter precipitation. Again, in the south, it's often rare for these temperatures to be cold enough for winter weather, but it's not impossible. What makes winter weather dangerous is the effects on basic infrastructure.
It's not built for all that cold.
The biggest culprit in this regard. Ice on the road leads to less traction between car tires and the roads, leading to car accidents and pileups. The colder temperatures, especially after the precipitation has stopped falling, can cause hypothermia, and a variety of other health issues without any source of heating. The ice, alongside strong winds, tends to knock out power, which is a major issue because then people who are unprepared do not have access to common ways of heating themselves. It's rare for winter weather to get that bad to where multiple states have millions upon millions of people without power. But as we will get into shortly, the 2021 Texas deep freeze was one event where that occurred. But real quick, before I jump into synopsis, the majority of people who like these videos are not subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy what I create, consider subscribing. It helps the channel and tells me I'm doing something right. Anyways, back to the 2021 Texas deep freeze.
Whether you're taking the back roads or navigating busy city streets, make sure you're doing...
The 2021 Texas deep freeze is an event that actually encompasses a major Arctic freeze that lasted from February 10th all the way through the 20th, and 2 different winter storms over the course of a week. The major contributor towards the winter weather that occurred was the unusually bitter Arctic air in the United States. From February 9th through the 10th, a strong winter storm brought significant impacts to the Ohio River and Mississippi River valleys. But the winter storm's impacts to Texas were minimal. What was important was that the winter storm's cold front brought cold temperatures into portions of Texas. On February 11th, North Texas would get their first taste of the series of the 2 winter storms to come, as lingering moisture across Texas led the
Hello guys, how's it going?
across the Dallas-Fort Worth metro, icing the roads. Of course, the primary concern for meteorologists was what was going to happen a few days later. At the same time, a well-defined low and frontal system was located off the coast of the Pacific Northwest on February 11th, and moved to the southeast due to steering from a shortwave trough over the next few days, bringing cold air, snow, and ice with it, with the primary effects of the system being observed in Texas from February 14th through the 15th. Temperatures were already below freezing across the majority of Texas, even before the winter storm moved in. As the storm moved in, temperatures plummeted, dropping drastically into the negatives across most of Texas and across the majority of the country. Then, another winter storm developed off the coast of Texas on the 16th, bringing even more snow and ice to the state. This winter storm would then move across the southern United States before splitting into 2, with the northern half moving towards Quebec, with the other system moving off the coast of New England. Snow, sleet, and freezing rain were all on the table when it came to both winter storms in Texas, with the first winter storm primarily producing massive amounts of snow across the state, with the second winter storm primarily bringing ice and lots of it. NWS offices were expecting a historic week regarding winter weather across the state of Texas, and broadcast meteorologists were not mincing their words. On the local level, as early as February 10th, electric utility crews were put on standby as the National Weather Service began issuing detailed statements on the upcoming event. But the residents, nor the rest of the country, didn't pay as much attention as they probably should have. Locals in Texas did prepare by stocking up on some supplies, but even with the messaging in place, a lot of Texans seemed unprepared.
And what I don't remember anything pretty much about the before, except for it was cold. I mean, it was colder than normal for us. I mean, for us, we are used to weather that's probably maybe in the 50s or 60s or 40s. So anything below 45, we're like, okay, this is weird, right? And we will make sure to go ahead and, like always, prepare ahead of time, right? We basically
This would be like a perfect Call of Duty map if like you like boxed off like here, you boxed off all that, and yeah.
Worst comes to worst, you do what you need to do, right? And we didn't know if we were gonna lose power or not. Thankfully, we didn't. Nobody I know did, but we didn't know ahead of time, right? And so, and one thing I remember we preparing was making sure we had enough firewood, making sure we had enough like water, like water bottles, and we had enough basic foods,
None. We were pretty much blindsided, honestly. We made the worst decision. I made the worst decision to kind of downplay it, honestly, because I didn't think it was gonna we were gonna see something on the scale of like what you would usually see somewhere around like the central United States, let's say maybe Kansas, maybe even Arkansas, northern Arkansas, but oof, that we did what we could. Luckily, it didn't do as bad, but we struggled.
Speculating the situation before it happened, it was likely that those across Texas felt like, 1, the snow, sleet, and ice accumulations were not going to be as significant as they ended up being, 2, preparations that needed to be made by local residents and government were not seen as necessary as they might have needed to be given the expected severity of the event, and most importantly, 3, the power grid would not fail in a catastrophic way. The power grid and the state of it needs to be explained before going any further into the timeline of events that occurred in Texas. The Texas power grid is weird. I say weird because it works nothing like any other power grid in the United States. But first, we gotta go back in time. To the 1800s, I swear this is relevant. When electricity was new and power grids began their early development, Texas kept to themselves
Oh, I
their own
don't
power
know.
grids, with companies interconnecting their own power grids in Texas to create the Texas Interconnected System. As part of the New Deal that President Franklin Delano Roosevelt made, FDR signed the Federal Power Act, which charged the Federal Power Commission with overseeing interstate electricity sales. So if Texas's power grid overlapped with other states, they'd be subject to regulations by the federal government. Texas could sustain itself due to an abundance of resources, so it wasn't seen as a major problem at the time. So Texas, being Texas, lived another day by not being subject to federal regulations. But in 1970, after a major blackout in the northeastern United States, the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, or ERCOT, was formed, covering most of the state of Texas. Now, ERCOT is not in charge of all of the Texas power grid. There's portions of the state, more specifically parts of the Panhandle and portions of far eastern Texas, that are not under ERCOT's control. The ERCOT grid, by only being in Texas, is not subject to federal government inspection, regulation, or funding.
I didn't think I had time for a master's, but with WGU, I can move through an accredited business degree as soon as I master the material.
So, I'm making the roof. I'm almost, like, kind of done with this.
When you stay at a Virgo, the homestead
Not like with, I haven't fabricated anything yet.
your vacation home.
About 2:47, 2 hours 47 minutes to the broadcast. Doing pretty good.
ERCOT is not monitored or managed by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Over the 1990s, the Texas electricity market was deregulated, aiming at counteracting the shortage of generation capacity at the time. Okay, so why is this a problem? Texas hates the feds so much that it's practically their entire state motto. What else is new? Well, remember back when I covered Katrina that the left time? Okay, so why is this a problem? Texas hates the feds so much that it's practically their entire state motto. What else is new? Well, remember back when I covered Katrina that the levee system's biggest issues came down to getting away with shortcuts because there wasn't any specific oversight agency that checked on whether or not the levee system was actually worth anything? Yeah, it's that all over again. ERCOT, as it stands, is held by a board of directors that is subject to oversight by the Public Utility Commission of Texas and the Texas State Legislature. The PUC has jurisdiction over what ERCOT does, and members of the PUC are appointed by the governor of Texas. TLDR, bureaucracy ensues. Because ERCOT and the PUC are not subject to federal regulation, they can selectively choose what standards they want to include for the power grid's infrastructure.
Oh boy.
But it also means they can just flat out ignore any suggestions made by other agencies.
Oh.
The Texas deep freeze came down to a lack of resources.
Yeah, I can already see where that's a bad idea. Not holding them up to standard code.
And process referred to as winterization.
You dumbasses.
Now, it goes without saying that electricity requires fuel in order to work. Whether that be through non-renewable energy sources such as fossil fuels or natural gas, or through renewable energy sources such as wind, solar, or hydroelectric, or nuclear because that is in its own category. Now, production of these sources of energy are managed by a few different agencies altogether. The important source of fuel for this event is natural gas, which is regulated by the Texas Railroad Commission. It goes without saying that when temperatures plummet well below freezing, that production of resources such as petroleum and natural gas go down, and the operations of wind farms go down as well. In order to get ahead of that with an expected increase increase in demand for electricity if it were to get cold, there would need to be a lot of resources in reserve. But there wasn't a lot. A lot of the grid relies on there being a constant production of resources to avoid the grid crashing. With very little resources in reserve, it was only a matter of time before the issue would come back to haunt them. But the biggest problem was the issues regarding winterization. ERCOT did not winterize their power grid's infrastructure after being suggested to do so. How are they able to do this? Because they aren't subject to federal regulations. The reason
And there you go.
against winterization is because, well, Texas doesn't experience winter.
Basically, in English, that's like United States. It's kind of like the 49 people that of your class that follow what they're supposed to do for homework, and Texas is that one kid that does and wings it. It goes and wings it and completely screws up at it. What a stupid decision by the government.
Often, and it doesn't really affect areas that far south. Which, while true to an extent, really doesn't mean that the state is immune from winter weather. The Deep South isn't immune from winter storms. They get winter storms once every few years, with some areas getting a large amount of snow, such as in 2011, 2014, and in 2021. 2011 specifically was the year that Texas remembers when it comes to winter weather, as Texas was hit hard by the 2011 Groundhog Day blizzard, and the state suffered rolling blackouts, with 75% of the state being affected by them. And it got so bad that Mexico was sending power to Texas through the Sharyland Utilities interconnection. Texas was told to winterize their power grid to prevent what happened in 2011 from happening again. That suggestion was ignored, because if there's anything that Texas, or for a matter of fact, any state likes to do, it's ignoring improving basic infrastructure because it costs money. Not to mention that in November of 2020, regulations that helped to punish companies that failed to deliver electricity during the 2011 blizzard were cut entirely. And when the power fails, a lot of other issues begin to arise. So the issues with the power grid were addressed multiple times without anything being done. And with it being up to the state, it was only a matter of time before something happened where the state of Texas would see a winter weather crisis like no other. And that happened in 2021. February 10th. While the main winter storm systems did not come into Texas until the 14th, the Arctic air from the Central Plains began to seep down southward into north central Texas. This would be responsible for the cold air that was in place across most of Texas. However, there was enough moisture in the air to support sleet and freezing rain, not as an organized line, but as sporadic showers of freezing rain over the nighttime hours on February 10th into the early morning hours of the 11th. With this risk in mind, the National Weather Service began issuing winter weather advisories for the possibilities of ice on the roads. One of the common sayings regarding winter weather is that if there is any winter precipitation coming, it's to stay off the roads. Or if you are on the roads, it's to go slower than the speed limit. Why is this important? Because Texas soon saw the first big sign of what was to come in the early morning hours of the 11th. February 11th, the Fort Worth pileup. As ice began to accumulate on the roadways, more specifically on the bridges where ice began to accumulate first, drivers were spinning out and crashing into one another. The issue with bridges specifically is because bridges ice more easily than roads do.
You wanna know why? Okay, if anybody ever listens to this, I'm gonna tell you something very, very, very important. You wanna know why bridges freeze more than roads? Take your road. This is the ground, okay? So imagine the ground's like this, right? Or imagine it's what's it called? Imagine I'm actually gonna draw this out in Minecraft. Imagine that this right here, like ready? Right here. Imagine this is the road, right? The air that's surrounding is coming from this side, and this side. However, there's warmth from the underside, so there's warmth from under here, and it comes up, and it allows the water to melt more easily. However, here's the problem about bridges, is that when you have a bridge, let's say this is a cutout, right? Cold air kind of flows upward, like this, and then now there you have air coming from this side, this side, this side. So cold air surrounds the bridge, more easily. And because cold air is surrounding it more easily, the water on this bridge will freeze, making bridges prone to freezing.
Why? Simple. Being surrounded on all sides by cold air means that there's less insulation when compared to having solid ground underfoot. So there are instances where the road itself isn't iced, but the bridge is. The issue of bridges icing first led to one of the worst pileups in recent memory. Car after car, truck after truck, semi after semi, not being able to see the black ice that had formed onto the bridges or aware of the risk of black ice, began ramming into each other, creating one of the largest pileups in Texas state history.
I wanted my hepatitis C gone.
I put off treating mine. Over 100 vehicles were involved in the pileup, with 6 people ultimately losing their lives. The pileup was already a sign of things to come with the dangerous winter weather ahead. How dangerous driving becomes even with the smallest amount of ice. But the issues regarding the potential failure of the power grid were already being observed. Due to the freezing temperatures in the state, water and oil and gas wells, where methane gas is extracted to use as energy for power plants, led to gas production to plummet before anyone lost power. By the end of the deep freeze, gas production in Texas dropped by 45%. February 12th. On February 12th, Governor Greg Abbott issued a state of
Not related to me, by the way.
Texas for all 254 counties. The Texas Division of Emergency Management began to deploy multiple state agencies to support response operations. The Railroad Commission, in charge of regulating the state's oil and gas, orders gas deliveries to be prioritized for homes, which is great for the 40% of Texan homes that are heated with gas, but not for those whose homes are heated through electricity. Winter storm watches began being issued by the National Weather Service across the state of Texas, and would continue to be issued over the next day across Texas and across other areas in the country in the path of the winter storm. February 13th. By February 13th, the cold weather disrupted a total of 22 gas processing plants. By the end of the deep freeze, 38 gas plants shut down or reduced production, equivalent to 8.9 billion cubic feet of lost gas processing plant capacity per day. Already, gas power plants are unable to supply the demand. The supply of fuel needed for Texans to use electricity is already becoming problematic, as equipment at power plants begin to freeze. Other sources of energy, such as coal and nuclear power plants, go offline, as valves and other equipment freezes, and dozens of wind turbines stop as ice begins forming around the blades. As gas plants have no places in gas, wells producing gas were vented or set aflame, with a total of 1.6 billion cubic feet of methane, instead of it being used for power because of the frigid temperatures, was disposed of. And all of the events that I just mentioned happened before the major winter storm began to produce snow over Texas. Winter storm warnings began being issued across Texas and the country, and very few would know the true horrors that would be experienced by those in its path. But it would be worse than anyone could have expected it to be. February 14th, the first winter storm. As the early morning hours came, every single square inch of the state of Texas was under a winter storm warning.
Damn.
The state and a sea of pink. NWS offices across the state expecting near blizzard-like conditions, specifically near Dallas, although it would be a while before winter precipitation would truly begin accumulating. Multiple states in the path of the winter storm, from Oklahoma to Ohio and Illinois, would be seeing significant precipitation totals. But the big focus was on Texas. Throughout the early morning hours, snowfall was beginning to pile up the Texas Panhandle and New Mexico as the low-pressure system was riding the jet stream. By noon, a complete line of snow showers extended from Oklahoma through San Angelo, Texas, moving through the state throughout the day and into the next. The timing saw the worst of the snow and ice come into areas such as Houston and the Dallas-Fort Worth area to be during the early morning hours of the 15th and into the afternoon hours. But as the Arctic front moved through, the threat now became the deadly cold. Wind chill warnings and advisories began to be issued as the cold front swept across the country, with wind chills expected to be around -50 to -35 degrees Fahrenheit across the northern parts of the country,
chilly.
and from -10 to -30 degrees Fahrenheit across the central portions of the country. In Texas, wind chills were expected to peak during the afternoon hours on the 14th throughout most of the
Frostbite possible after 15 minutes of exposed skin? That's scary.
in the northern part of the state through the single digits near the coastline. Records would be broken as the temperatures continued to drop. Pipes began to burst, an issue which would continue to plague Texas and other states throughout the week. But the power crisis was just beginning. As people began turning up their heaters, demand for gas and electricity surged, and ERCOT projected that electricity demand will exceed the supply, and issues an urgent alert asking for consumers to conserve electricity, because you can easily conserve electricity when you are trying to prevent being submerged with wind chills below 0 degrees. In the late night hours of the 14th and the early morning hours of the 15th, ERCOT set an all-time winter peak record for the system load of 69,871 megawatts. ERCOT warns the possibility of rolling blackouts throughout the week in an effort to conserve resources. During this, President Joe Biden signed a disaster declaration for the state of Texas, allowing for federal aid to be allocated to the state. The Texas
Finally, they help. Holy crap.
But it still had a long way to go before it would hit rock bottom. February 15th. As snow, sleet, and freezing rain pummeled the state of Texas throughout the 14th and into the 15th, the power grid was struggling. The state of the power grid in ERCOT's territory specifically was only continuing to get worse, as inches of snow fell across Texas, followed by strong winds and bitter cold temperatures. It was only a matter of time before things spiraled out of control, and spiral it did. At 1 a.m., ERCOT orders electric companies across the state to cut power to homes and businesses to help prevent a complete shutdown of the entire power grid, a process called load shedding. Areas designated as critical infrastructure, places such as hospitals, are left alone while neighborhoods have their power cut off, left with no ways of heating without generators, or using other means of keeping warm such as gas stoves and grills, and using their cars if they could. The use of gas stoves, generators, grills, and vehicles led to people dying of carbon monoxide poisoning, all in an effort to stay warm and to prevent hypothermia and frostbite. By Monday evening, 3.6 million homes and businesses are without power, and most of the state is under a blackout. Methane gas processing facilities, which were not registered as critical infrastructure, lose power, further increasing the difficulty in providing the gas to power plants. Oil refineries, chemical plants, and other industrial operators lose power, with 3.5 million pounds of pollution being released. And yet again, it somehow gets worse.
Getting a degree at ASU is a journey that can take you anywhere. Into a world of renowned award-winning faculty. Becoming your best starts with learning.
A computer glitch occurred during the day where megawatts were taken off of the power grid due to incorrect price signals. So what does the PUC do in order to help fix the problem? Well, the PUC orders ERCOT to correct that problem manually by setting the prices to $9,000 per megawatt hour to encourage more supply to come online.
Jesus. Hold on. How much is electricity per megawatt? Cents per kilowatt is 10 cents a kilowatt hour. So he times that by about 1,000. 10 times 1,000, that's 10,000 divided by 10,000 divided by 100. Let's go. That's $100 per. Oh my God! They rose it to $100. Jesus Christ!
That turns out lasted for 2 days longer than it was supposed to.
Wow!
That doesn't work at all.
That is hella
pricey. What ends up happening is that the Texas utility company Griddy looks at the new rate, and because their prices are determined by the market, they decide to use the $9,000 per megawatt hour rate on their customers and charge the customers that rate. However, the issues within ERCOT's area seem to be isolated only to them, or at least the severity of the issues in question. Other areas being devastated by the Arctic blast are able to import power from the East Coast. Texas, on the other hand, was only able to import 1,000 megawatts because they are isolated from the rest of the country's power grid. All the while, the coldest temperatures of the event begin to seep into Texas. In northern Texas, near Amarillo, the temperature in the early morning hours of the 15th was negative 11 degrees, with the coldest area in the Texas Panhandle being negative 20 degrees at Palo Duro Reservoir. In NWS Dallas's area of responsibility, temperatures hit 4 degrees at the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, with the high temperature for the 15th being colder than the low temperature. Near Houston, wind chills below 0 degrees were observed across the metro on the 15th, with the coldest temperatures occurring in the early morning hours of the 16th. With temperatures this extreme, pipes bursting due to the cold temperatures was common, leaving many who didn't already have power now without running water. February 16th. At the coldest point of the event, temperatures across Texas were 40 degrees below normal. And yet, another winter storm was about to bring more snow and ice to Texas from the 16th through the 17th. With snow blanketing northern Texas and freezing rain falling onto central parts of the state. Areas with the northern band of snow saw snow totals ranging from 1 to 3 inches across the Dallas-Fort Worth area to 5 to 9 inches from a band that formed over I-40 in the Panhandle. The big threat from this new storm was snow and ice, and lots of it. Ice was expected to accumulate on top of the snow, sleet, and ice that was already on the ground. The threat of ice was specifically for areas in eastern Texas to the south of Dallas. Ice expected to be over 1/4 of an inch across a vast swath of Texas, with higher amounts observed to the north of the Houston area. With more winter precipitation in the forecast, winter storm warnings were issued yet again across most of Texas and across the country. Abbott declares a reform of ERCOT as an emergency item for the state legislature, and people are still left without power. February 17th. During the afternoon and evening hours of the 16th through the 17th, the winter storm produced additional snow and ice across central and southern Texas. With the new round of snow and freezing rain, restoration efforts are stalled as 2.8 million people across Texas are without power. February 18th. While most of the winter precipitation in Texas was over, there was one last round in south central Texas. A heavy snow band brought an additional 1 to 4 inches of snowfall across the San Antonio area, with the most snowfall being recorded near Del Rio, Texas, with 9.7 inches of snowfall being recorded in 24 hours, breaking the 24-hour snowfall record for that area. As temperatures rose and more generation was brought online, ERCOT ended the statewide rolling outages. But as the winter storm moved away from Texas, the threat of additional winter precipitation began to fade. But the biggest issue now was the fallout of the frigid cold. The issue of pipes bursting was an issue seen throughout the state of Texas and across areas that were in the Arctic air mass. But in Texas, this was compounded by water treatment facilities losing power as well. This led to a decreased water pressure, and water boil advisories were issued across the state. Nearly 15 million people lost access to clean water and were forced to boil their water before using it. Hard freeze warnings were issued for the 19th and into the 20th, and come the 20th, the majority of winter warnings expired by that night, ending the long week for the state of Texas. But many Texans were left with memories of surviving the deep freeze that they could never forget.
And something I remember that to be, I think, okay, fine, it's going to be bad. And then I didn't realize until the day it started how bad it was going to be, because
yeah, that's so cool. That is such a cool little building. A clinic, little pool, like a hot tub pool. Yeah, storm shelter, shop, bank, and the library. I'm gonna take a break now. I'm